In the next couple of hours, I'm gonna walk you through the entire process of building this AI image generator app, which has authentication, payments, database, and a premium looking landing page. Before we jump into coding, I'd like to give you a quick demo of the end result so that you know what exactly we are building in this course. So this is an AI software as a service where users can authenticate and they will be redirected to the studio screen. And here they can upload an image and get an AI generated version of it. There are 6 different presets that we provide, which are Storybook, Anime Cell, Clay Render, PixArt, Voxel Block, and finally Marble Sculpture. Before generating the image, they can select an image model from this dropdown and they can see the history of the images that they generated. And there is also this option where they can download the image. When it comes to pricing, there are 3 different plans. The free plan, which gives them 3 monthly generations so that they can test out the platform, and if they're happy with it, they can upgrade to the pro plan, which is $19 a month and it gives 75 monthly generations. Or the studio plan, which is $29 a month and it gives 175 generations. I will show you how to add yearly plans as well. And from the dashboard, users can see how many generations they left. So overall, this is the general idea of this product. Once you complete this course, hopefully you should be able to add more features on top of it and actually monetize it. When it comes to the tech stack, we will be using Next.js, ShadCN, TypeScript, Postgres, Drizzle, Sentry, and Clerk. For image generations, we'll be using OpenAI. By building this project, you will learn how to implement AI image generations, you will learn about the payments, authentication, and database. And I will also show you my workflow on how to build this kind of 3D premium looking landing pages. And as usual, at the end of this course, we are going to deploy it so that you can have a live URL. And the best part is you don't need to pay anything to be able to follow along. From start until the end, all the tools we use are completely free to get started with. The source code of this project will also be free. You can find the link in the description. So if you're ready, let's get started. Before we start coding, I have to mention that the design of this app was mostly done by AI, specifically with Klein, which is an open source AI coding agent right within your IDE. If you sign up with the link in the description, you will get extra free credits. We will talk about the details a bit later in the video, but if you want to use the same workflow that I have, you need to install the Klein VS Code extension. So sign up first, get those free credits, and get the VS Code extension, and we will handle the rest in the incoming sections. And also for AI monitoring, error tracking, performance, and metrics, we will be using Sentry, and you can get extra $80 free credits with the link in the description. Thanks for watching, and let's actually start with the course. Now, this is me from the future because I wanted to make a huge disclaimer before we get started. This course is not for absolute beginners. As you can tell, we have a ton of different features like AI, payments, authentication, etc. So I'm not going to explain what a variable is or what a for loop is, if statement, so on and so forth. You need to know the basics of full stack development, and it would be nice if you have some experience with Next.js. If not, I have a free course on Next.js as well, where I explain everything in more detail and you can check that out. I'll leave the link in the description. So this course is more about understanding how everything works together rather than typing every single line of code. There will be a lot of copying and pasting, but I will explain everything we do in the course. So you already know my style. I go pretty slowly and try to explain everything as much as possible, but in this project we will be doing some copying and pasting. So I would recommend you to have the source code open in a separate tab so that you can follow along easily. Okay, so with that being said, thanks so much for your time, and now let's jump into coding. Alright then, let's get into it. Just to give you some motivation or kind of like context, this is 8 a.m. in the morning. I got my coffee, wake up at 6, eat something, prepare the content, and now we'll start building the project. I hope that gives you kind of like motivation if you're looking for it. Let me just zoom in. This is an empty folder that I just created on my desktop. I call this as Luma Studio, but you can call it anything. Just go ahead and open this up in VS Code. Now we're going to start a Next.js project. And as you already know, the command for this is called npx create next app at latest. So I'm going to copy this. Instead of saying latest, I will add a specific version so that even if you're watching it in the future, it should still work out as expected, as I have in this video. So I'm going to open up my terminal with Control J. Okay, so that's the shortcut, and you can kill the left hand side with Control B. Okay, so I'm going to paste this in, and instead of saying latest, I'll be using 16.1.6, which is the latest version at the time that I'm recording this video. Okay, I want you to put the same version so that you don't really get any errors if you're watching this video in the future. And I'll put dot at the end, which means initialize it under the current folder. So I'm gonna run this, and you might get another question which says press yes, just press enter, okay? And then you're gonna see this. I'll say go with the recommended defaults like TypeScript, ESLint, Tailwind CSS, and App Router. Okay, so this is going to install all these files, packages, and give us a template, a boilerplate Next.js application so that we have a starter point. And then we will add our own features, our own styles on top of it. So here we go. We just got the success message. I'm going to clear up my terminal by typing clear, and then I'll say npm run dev, which is going to start our application on localhost 3000. So we'll control click to it, and that's the app we got at the moment. Now let's keep it simple in this section. I'll provide you the assets. For example, I'll give you the demo images, right? I'll give you this background video. I'll give you these images, so on and so forth. For this, you will find a link in the description called assets. Just go ahead and grab all these files, and we're gonna put it under the public. So I just grabbed them and put it under the public. So as you can tell, that's the anime cell example. Then we have this one, that one, 4 different gallery images. We have the logo that I prepared with AI, and maybe I can give you the prompts, how I created them a little bit later in the video. Okay, so these are all the images. Just go ahead and put it under the public folder. And then you will see another file. It is going to be called as hero.mp4. You don't need to put it here. I'll show you like where to put it, but basically it's going to be this video, right? It's like 3D. We have this globe. It looks very nice, premium, but we will not put it under the public. So let me clear this. We are going to upload it to a service, which is something that we'll see in a second. Okay, so now that we got the assets, let's go ahead and create a .env file. This is the place where we will put our environment variables. Now, first things first, we would like to get a database connection URL. And for the database, we're going to be using Postgres, which is going to be provided by Neon. I'm going to put a link in the description. They're going to give you a free plan. So go ahead and log in with your GitHub account. So I have already logged in. I'll just go right here and I'm going to say, neon.com. And then I'll say login. I thought I logged in, but looks like not. I'll just log in with my GitHub account. Then we will create a new project. So if you don't have any, don't worry about it at all. So we'll just create a new project. Let's give it a name. I'll just say something like Luma Studio. I'm gonna leave everything as it is, and then I'll just say create. And then we can say get the connection string. Now from here, I think I'll just select the .env option. I'll copy this entire thing and then go right here, paste this in. So that's the database URL that we will be using a little bit later in the video. So that was the database URL. Now we would like to set up another service so that we can store our files and images. For this, we're going to be using ImageKit. Again, you will find the link in the description, which is going to give you a free plan. So go ahead and log in, or if you don't have an account, just go ahead and sign up. This is what I'll be doing. I already have an account, but from this browser, I'll just do it from scratch so that you can see the process. You can select your role. I'll say I am a developer. Why am I using it? Let's say for real-time image optimization, transformations, and delivery. And I'll say next. You can just select any of the regions. This is the one that is closest to me. So I'm going to select that one and I'm going to say next. just leave everything. How did I learn about it? Of course, YouTube. You'll learn it from my video. So let's just say YouTube and submit. And once this is done, we're going to get a public key as well as a private key. And you can find it under the developer options. So I'm going to get my public key, copy it, and from here I'll say something like next_public, and then we're going to say image kit underscore, let's say public key. Put the equal sign and paste this in. Then we're going to have, let's say, next. Sorry, this time we are not going to put next public because this will be a private key. So notice how here we didn't put the next public, right? This is a prefix that you would like to have if you are sharing a value in the client. But if this is going to be only in server, then you don't really want to put this at the beginning, okay? Now let's go ahead, copy the value. I think you need to set a password. And to be able to set the password, just click this link, which will take you to profile screen. And here you will see something like set password. I have already done this. And here I will go ahead, reload this page. And here I'll just paste this in, which is my password. Now I can copy the private key. Okay, so I'm going to copy it. And then I'll just come here. Let's just say something like image kit underscore private key. And then paste the value. So I just said we have hero.mp4 file, right? And this is where we would like to upload it. So they have some images and videos for demo purposes. But here now we would like to upload that video. So I will go ahead and drag and drop it right here. And I'll just say upload this file. And after a couple of seconds, it should be uploaded. Now, originally this is like 11 megabytes, but you don't really want to send all of this to client, right? And what ImageKit will do, it's going to compress this video so it is sent not as large as 11 megabytes, right? So otherwise your users would see a very laggy, or it would be like loading for a couple of seconds depending on the internet speed of your users. But thanks to ImageKit, everything will be super fast because they will do all kinds of optimizations and compressions so that your users doesn't really get all this huge data. I hope that makes sense. Now we will be using it later in the video. We will basically copy this URL, but I'll walk you through it once we get there. Now the next product that we're going to set up is going to be Sentry, which is the best error monitoring platform. It's completely free to get started with. Especially if you use the link in the description, they will give you extra $80 free credits. And companies like Cursor, Bolt, Microsoft, all the best companies out there are using it. So you definitely want to learn how to set this up, and I'll walk you through it later in the video. Just go ahead and get started with it, which is going to let you to sign up. Again, use the link to get those free credits. Now I'm already logged in. And here I'll go ahead, create a new project. So under the projects, probably this is what you're going to see. These are all the projects that I had in the past, but let's just create one from scratch. Select Next.js. Then for the name, you can say something like Luma Studio. And then I'll say create the project. I'm going to leave everything as it is. If you wanted to, you can customize it. Let me zoom in. I will copy the script. Now this is what they call the Sentry wizard, which will basically do all kinds of setup that you would need, okay? All you have to do is just kill your app with Control-C and paste this in. So it's going to set up the Sentry, but before that, it'll ask a couple of different questions. It says you have these files which are not committed. Do you want to still, keep going? I'll say yes. It'll take us to here so that we can authenticate. Now we'll go back here. It's going to install the Sentry Next.js SDK. Now once it is installed, we're going to get a couple of different questions. I'm just going to get the recommended options. So I'll say, yes, we would like to enable the tracing so that we can track the performance of our application. And then we will have the session replay. Basically, it's going to get the, like video recordings. Let's say your user clicked to this button and for some reason it failed, right? The application break. Sentry is going to take a video of it so that you can see it on the dashboard and see how your users are using your application. Okay, so this is something that we'll see in detail a little bit later in the video. It's recommended as well, so I'll just say yes, included. Same for the logs. And now they give you an example page so that you can test out Sentry. I'll say yes, go ahead and create it. We will be using Vercel to deploy our app. I'll say yes, go ahead and include it as well. So it says basically copy this. Okay, that's the value. Just like any other environment variables, we need to copy it and put it under the .env file. So I'll say yes, I copied it. And then I'll say yes for the very last, and here I just said yes for the very last question. And here we're using VS Code. I'm gonna select this one, and I think that should be done. Now I will go right here and paste this command, which is, or the environment variable, not command, sorry. Yeah, go ahead and paste it. Then we can start our application, and then it says visit this path, okay? So I'll just say clear this up, npm run dev, and then we will just test out if, it's like if it is set it up correctly. I will visit that path, which is called Sentry example page. Okay, so this is what we got. I'll say throw the sample error. So we got one issue. You can go right here under the issues. You should be able to see it. I'll select the specific project, which is this one. And as you can tell, it is right here. It has been created 15 seconds ago. Now, how does that work? Let me display pretty quickly. Basically, it has created this example page. And when you visit here, you're going to see that button. And once you press that, let's see. Okay, so once you press that button, it's going to call this function, right? On click, it's going to call this one, which calls our API. Again, this is created by Sentry, and all it does is throwing an error. So that's the simple setup. We are going to see this in detail a little bit later in the video. Okay, so that was the Sentry setup. The next thing and the very last one that we would like to set up is going to be Clerk. Again, you can find the link in the description. They are incredibly generous that I have to mention. Up until 50,000 monthly active users, you basically don't need to pay anything, which is insane. And if you don't know already, they are the platform where we can manage our users with authentication, right? Now, on top of these beautiful components like sign up, sign in, user button, so on and so forth, they also have billing. And this is what we'll be using to charge our users monthly and yearly. And you can even provide them a free trial. Okay, so we'll see how to use it a little bit later in the video. For now, let's go ahead and sign in. Once we sign in, we will create a project and get our environment variables. So from here, I'll just say create a new application. For the options, I think I'll be using GitHub and Google, as well as email. But if you wanted to, you can add more, like Facebook, Apple, so on and so forth. But if you wanted to add more than 3, I think you need to be on the Pro plan, which is not really needed in this case. So I'm going to disable even the Apple. These are the ones that I'll have. For the application name, I'll just say Luma Studio, and then I'll say create the application. Once it's been created, you will be on this page. They have a bunch of different SDKs, but we're going to be using their Next.js SDK. Okay. Now, for now, let's just skip all these steps and only get the environment variables. So I'm going to copy this, and we will paste it right here under the .env file. Okay, so I just realized we have this file as well. I think this has been created by Sentry when we run that wizard command. Basically, they say do not commit this file. Of course, that's .env file. We would not commit this. And here it says you can also set this in .env file. Like this is what we have done. So you can delete this completely or even delete the entire file because we already have this auth token. Okay, so that's the, I think, environment variables setup. We also got a Next.js app, right? We got our assets. We uploaded our hero, the hero video to image kit, which is something that we'll use in the incoming sections. Now, I would like to leave this section right here. I don't want to push, too fast and get confused. So I'm going to leave everything as it is and maybe add a commit. And just before we do so, notice how Sentry created all these files, which basically sets up Sentry on both client and server side. Okay, so these are the things that you can take a look at, but maybe we can get into it a bit later in the video. So go right here, and I think before we commit anything, just make sure that .env file has been ignored. And I can see it's been ignored because it is right here, right? Okay, so just leave everything as it is. Press this button which says stage all changes. Then I will create a commit message using AI. Let's see what we are gonna get. Okay, so we integrated Sentry. We have added all these files. We added some assets. Okay, so I think I will commit this. And then let's go into GitHub and create a repo and then push our changes into that repo. Okay, so I'm logged in my GitHub account. Just say create new repository. For the name, I'll say not GitHub, of course. Let's say Luma Studio. I will leave everything as it is. For now, I'll make it private, but once I publish this video, I'll make this to be public. So at the time that you're watching this video, this should be public. But for now, I'll go with private, and I'll say create the repository. I will copy this, go into my terminal, let's kill this with Control C, and then I'm gonna paste this in, which is going to take our local changes and push it to this repository. Okay, so here we can see we got the files right here. Okay, so that's it. Let's leave this section right here. I know that we are going a bit slowly, but it's better than, it's better to go slow and not get confused rather than just doing everything at once. Okay, so with this, hopefully I'll see you in the next section. So this is where we left. Now we would like to go ahead and set up ShadCN. So I'll go ahead and search for it. If you haven't heard of it, basically this will be our UI library. So we will be able to build this kind of UIs without writing too much code. So we are going to get a bunch of different components out of the box. So head over to documentation, scroll to the bottom, select Next.js, and then say use the CLI. So I'm using npm, so I'm going to copy this and go into my terminal. I'll clear this up and then I'll paste this in. So this will install ShadCN, and here I'll go with the defaults. So I'll just press enter a couple of times. Okay, so it'll create this components.json file, and then we can get different components. Let's just for now get the card component or even the button component. So I'll just search for it. So this is the button ShadCN gives you, and if you want to install it, you would copy it and then paste it right here. So this is going to update the global.css file, which is right here. As you can tell, these are the CSS variables that are added by ShadCN. This is for the dark mode and this is for the light mode, right? This is for dark mode and this is for the light mode colors. And now on top of this, we would like to get the, this theme, right? This orange theme. As you can tell, the buttons are orange. I don't know why this image kind of blurred out, but to be able to get that theme, we will be using TweakCN. So head over to tweakcn.com and just say try it now. Then you can get a bunch of the different themes. The one that I'll be using is going to be Sunset Horizon. Okay, it is this one. And if you want to get this code, you would just press this button. You can either manually copy and paste it to your index.css file, or in our case, global.css, and update the root layout. Or you can just copy the script or the command, then paste it into your terminal. And by the way, installing button has created this folder called UI, And within this, we have the button. Now, you don't really need to think about this code at all. If you want to use a button, you would just go here anywhere in your, in your app, and you would just say, let's display a button element. And you would import it from components, UI, button, right? And then you can put your context or the content. Okay, so that's it. That's how you would use a button, which is something that we will use a little bit later in the video. Now I will clear this up and I'll paste what we just copied. So it is going to overwrite our CSS variables. I'll say yes, or just press enter. So did I press no? Let me say run this again. And then I'll press Y. Okay, now it's been updated. I think our CSS file, yeah, here we can see we got the orange theme color. Now in our application, I just want to use the dark mode, okay? So I don't want to use a light mode at all. If you wanted to, you can do it. And let me show you how you can implement that. So here you would search for dark mode, select Next.js, and then you would install this package. So I'm going to paste this into my terminal. And then, as you can tell, you would create a theme provider under the components. So copy and paste it. Then you would wrap your entire application under the root layout with this component, okay? In our case, I just want to have the, dark class in my root layout so that it is always, it's always in the dark mode. So here under the HTML, I'll just say class name should be equal to dark. And let's run our application. I'll say npm run dev. Okay, so for now, we cannot see that orange theme because I think this is using custom colors. Let's go into page.tsx. I'm gonna delete everything. Here, I'll just say, give me a div. Let's just put some content, like I'll get a button. I'll say click me as the content. Let's save and see the end result. As you can tell, this theme is working out of the box. Now, next, we are gonna go ahead and visit our image kit dashboard. So go ahead and log in, open up the media library, and then from the assets that I have provided, find the showcase.mp4, which is this background video that we're gonna be using. So go ahead and install it on your laptop and then take that video and upload it right here. So this is what I'll be doing now. Okay, so I just drag and drop it. I said upload and it is done. It is right here. Now we will be copying these URLs and we are going to create a constants file. Let's go under the, I think, lib. Here I will create constants.ts file. Now for the content, head over to the source code and find this file. Then copy the entire content, okay? Paste this in. Now I will walk you through it, but first I want you to update these two URLs. So this is the one that I have. This is in my image kit library, but go ahead and copy yours. Okay, so go ahead, copy that and paste it right here. Then do the same thing for showcase background image. So go ahead, copy this URL and replace it with this one. So delete this and put your own value. Okay, so basically we have a bunch of different constants that we're going to be using. For example, when user wants to upload some images, we will check if it is JPEG, PNG, or WebP. Otherwise, they cannot upload any other file types, okay? Then we have some highlights, like as you can tell from the demo image. So we have things like AI magic, art styles. I know this is very blurry, but please ignore that. These are the constants, with the icon, with the text. Then we have similar thing here for the stats. So these are the things that we will be using, right? We have gallery stats, images, so on and so forth. And we even have like the testimonials. As you can tell, it's going to be for this section, right? So we have a bunch of different reviews with user profile, name, role, so on and so forth. So that's the goal of this file. Nothing special, like you don't need to memorize or understand any of this. They're just basically some arrays, objects, and constants. So that's it. Alright, so now that we got our constants, we can build our homepage UI design. Before we jump into coding this page, let's try to set up authentication with Clerk. Now we already created a project, we got our environment variables, but as you can tell, there is more to it. So we need to set up the proxy file. In the past, this is called as middleware, but now they have updated, it is called proxy. But it's the same thing, right? And then we need to set up the layout file. Basically, we need to wrap our entire application with the Clerk provider component. So we're going to be doing this in a second. Let's first go ahead and create another page. So we have the home page, which is right here. Then we need to create a studio page. This is going to be protected. Only authenticated users can visit it, right? So I'll say page.tsx. Let's say RFCE, and I'll say studio page. Now to be able to get this RFC working, you need to install this extension. I think already most of you guys have it, but just in case if you don't, go ahead and install that. Okay, so this will be protected, and we can protect this with the proxy file. Now here, instead of doing everything manually, I'll be using AI to help me build it, because it's 2026 and most of us are using AI. And just in case if you're not using it, I'd like to show you what it is capable of, and we're going to be using it in multiple places. And for this specifically, I'll be using Klein. You will find the link in the description. Klein is basically an open source coding agent that we're going to be using in this project. Now, I'll be using it from here on out. If you don't get it, I think you will be frustrated to be able to follow along because, I will be going a lot faster than you. You have to just always copy and paste to be able to, get to my pace. So I want you to go ahead and sign up. It's completely free to get started with. You don't need to pay anything. This is what I'll be doing. I'll just go ahead and sign in with my GitHub account. And then you need to install their VS Code extension. So head over here and just search for Klein. Let's try to find it. Okay, it's this one. Go ahead and install. Then you'll be able to see it on the right hand side. So you can press this button and here you will see Klein. Now we'll get into it. This is kind of like the user interface for everyone, right? But for a little bit more cracked programmers, you can also use it in the CLI. I will show you the both. Okay, so head over to Klein and log in. I just asked them to give me some balance so that I can show you. But I think when you first sign up, you will also get some credits without paying anything. And even if you don't have any credits, you can still use it because here you can have a bunch of different integrations. So let's say you have a ChatGPT subscription, like $20 a month. You can just come here under the settings and you can put it as your API provider. Okay, so I already have the $20 subscription from ChatGPT, so I can just authenticate and connect it. But even if you don't have, like you can get any of these. In this case, I'll get Klein. They have some free plans as well, right? But let's say you want to use the best models. At the moment, it is Cloud Opus 4.6. It's literally one of the best. You need to connect it with your Anthropic account or pass some API keys, right? Now, I see a lot of beginners are getting scared or kind of confused because AI can almost build anything at this point, but I think it's completely depends on how you think about it. So you can be very depressed and say AI can build anything, what's the point of coding? Or you can be very excited and just say, okay, AI can build anything. I literally have a senior developer right in my fingerprints, right? And that's where I'm trying to be in most of the time. Just be optimistic because you can't really control it. Like AI just getting better and better, right? Like in the past, if you had some questions, you had to visit Stack Overflow, right? Ask your question and get humiliated, so on and so forth. But now you can just ask the most stupid question and it would just say, hey, let me just try to explain to you. That's a completely normal question, right? Okay, so I hope you get the point. Just, I would say, don't get stressed about AI at all. Just try to be on this side so that you can ship more, faster, and hopefully make more money at the end of the day. Okay, so we're going to take a look at the rest of the dashboard. You can pause the video and, go over it, explore it if you wish. One of the most important things I would say is the MCP server. So head over here under this tab and I want you to get the context 7. go ahead and install it. This is from Upstash, completely free to get started with. Basically, this is going to get the latest documentations from AI. Okay, now you can go here and just say create a new chat. Then you can select the model. As I said, if you want to get the free models like this one, you can select it and then come here, create a new chat, and this is what we'll be doing. So here we will just say copy this prompt, because this is what Clerk gives us, right? It says copy this quick start guide as a prompter for LLMs to implement Clerk in your Next.js applications. So I have just copied it and I will paste it right here. And here maybe I'll just say at the very end, I think I don't need to say it, but just to give you an example, I'll say my .env file is already set up, so you don't need to think about that at all. Think about it at all. Okay, so I'm going to run this. Now there is plan mode and act mode. Here I selected the act mode, which is going to implement it immediately. Okay, so it's installing Clerk Next.js once again, which is fine, but normally it shouldn't. But even if it installs, that's completely fine. We already have the package. Okay, so there is also the plan mode. And by the way, as I'm talking, it's going to build all these files like the proxy.ts file, right? It is basically following the prompt from Clerk. And you can take a look at the details of the prompt. Let's just see. I'm going to copy this and go in one of these pages like the constants. Okay, so I think let's just wait for this to be completed and then I'll try to see that prompt. Okay, so as you can tell, it has updated the layout file as well. I think it got the Clerk provider, wrap our entire application with it. Let's see what's going on. Okay, so it is trying to rerun our application, and once everything is done, we are going to just test this out. I think it's done. I will open this up. As you can tell, we have the sign in and sign up buttons, and as you click to them, here we can see we are in the sign up page or in the sign in page. Okay, I'll go back to VS Code. Now I will say make the, and actually before we type it, let me just scroll to the top. I just want to show you that it got all these components from Clerk, right? And then it wrapped our entire application with the Clerk provider. Here you can tell. Then we have components like show when user is signed out or when user is signed in. When user is signed out, we are going to see these buttons, which are, these buttons that we just see. And if user is signed in, we would see the user button. Now here, if you wanted to, you can just say mode should be equal to model. By default, it's equal to redirect. And I was just going to say make the buttons to be model, but it is just easier to do it by yourself. Now, if you press that, you're going to get this model. Now, how did that work? How AI understand this prompt? Well, let's just copy it and paste it at the very bottom and see what Clerk gives us. So it has some rules. Basically, we should always use the Clerk middleware from here, and you can read the rest. It says never, don't do these, what else? It says verify before responding, so on and so forth. So we just copied this prompt and paste it right here. Then AI was able to implement it. That was just a simple use case, but if you can imagine, you can use this in very different ways and build very complicated features without writing any code. And this is actually what most developers do at this point. Now here there is also plan mode, which is something that I would use if I were to, build a little bit more complicated feature. So let's say you would select the plan mode and you would say, I don't know, like build me a to-do application. So if you run it in the plan mode, it's going to gather some information from you. So it's going to ask some follow-up questions like, do you want me to use TypeScript, JavaScript? Do you want me to use Postgres for the database or, MongoDB? And what kind of features do you want? Only CRUD or more than that? you get the point. So it's going to get all kinds of information from you so that it can architect a plan and build the project itself. Now, if you were to build simple features, then you can use the Act mode. This is what I would suggest. Now, here what I'll be saying is that I'm going to say go into the proxy.ts file and make our studio page to be protected, right? And here I'll say make the studio page protected under the proxy file. And you can reference the files just just typing add, and then you can just say proxy.ts. Now this is referenced with the with that file, which is this one. And you can have typos as well, it would understand it, but let's do it correctly. So I have just lost my internet connection. It wasn't able to complete it, but basically here is the solution. I'll paste this in from my notes. We need to get the create route matcher, and this is going to include the studio file. So this is our page that we want to be protected. And then within the Clerk middleware, we will add this method. Then it should protect that. Now let's save this. And I think we should save this file as well. Looks like I forgot to save it. Now let's go ahead and try to rerun this. So we can visit the /studio. Hopefully it should be protected. And as you can tell, we are in the sign in screen. Okay, so I'll go back and let's just try to sign in. I'll go with my Google account. And once you are authenticated, user should be right here under the users. Okay, so it looks like this user has signed in. We can see the user button where we can sign out. And this user should be right here. Just go ahead and refresh. As you can tell, it is working correctly and successfully. Now we can build the UI of this home screen. Right, we're going to get started with the hero section. So I will go into the page.tsx, which is this one. Okay, so under the home page, here I will have a main element. This is going to get some classes. Let me type this in and I can zoom in as well. So I'll say class name, minimum height of screen, let's say. This will get the BG background, padding of 3. Smaller screens and above, padding will be incremented by 1. And larger screens, padding could be incremented by 1 once again. And here, instead of putting everything in this file, right, making it 500 lines of code, what I'd like to do, instead creating components one by one. So I'll say home hero section. And this will be a component that we are going to import. And I think this could be self-closed. I'll copy the name. Let's go under the components, not under the UI, but just under the components. I'll say .tsx. And we can import this file. Okay, so within this file, what do we want to have? We would like to get the navbar element with our logo, right? And I think I'm running the demo application. Let me just go ahead and run that, which is right here. Okay, so this is what we would like to build. We're going to have the navbar element with the sign in button as well as the get started button. So this will try to sign us up. Okay, so that's the sign up and that's the sign in. We are going to display our video in the background. Then we're going to have the demo image. Now, why this looks so good is because we have the kind of like container, right? And we make them to be rounded. And the video itself is looking very premium. Now let's see how we can make that work. If I have to be honest, I have generated this with AI. So I found the background image. So it was just an image I think I found online. Then I went to ChatGPT. So I said, create me this image in this orange color. Okay, I tried it a couple of times until I got this image itself. So this globe is generated by ChatGPT. Okay, and then I need to make this animated like this one, right? Let me just display. It should be animated, like rotating. And for this, there is Clink AI. This is not sponsored, by the way. They don't even know that I'm recording this video. It is just very good that I need to mention. This is what I have used. And here is my prompt. Okay, so I just passed this image, right? And I said, give me a 5-second video. So you can select the duration. In this case, like I think it says 8 seconds, but you can click to it and customize it. And here's my prompt to generate it. So animate this glowing orange digital globe rotating slowly in space. You can read the rest, but yeah, basically just running this in 2 minutes or 5 minutes, it's going to give you this end result. Then you can upload this image or the video itself to ImageKit. This is what we have done. It is right here. So it is optimized when we serve it to our client. Yeah, so we'll just put it as a background, as a video. Now let's go under the hero section. Now this is something that I have generated with AI, right? So I don't want to pretend like as if I have done this completely by myself. Of course, there were things that I need to update, but it was mostly generated with Klein AI, okay? So you can do the same thing, but I would say this model wouldn't work that good because the best models are right here. It is like Opus, and this is what I'm using daily. I think Codex is also very good, but if you just want to use the best one, it would be Cloud Opus 4.6 at the time that I'm recording this video. So what I'll be doing and what I want you to do, just find the source code, okay? It is free. Get this file, find it, delete everything right here, and then just paste this in. 100 lines of code, and if you save, hopefully everything should be working fine. Here we need to import the home hero section. Why we cannot do it? I think here I have it as this kind of an export. Okay, now let's go into homepage and see what we got. As you can tell, now it is not really working correctly, but at least we got the video, we have the logo, right? And we have the content, which is our demo image. Now what I want you to do, like as you can tell, we have classes like home, hero, hero surface, but we don't really have these styles. And we can add it under the global.css. Now that's the beauty of AI. You don't really need to think about CSS at all because it is just time consuming, time wasting, and nothing else. It has nothing to do with how you make money, how you ship. It is just some styling. And what I want you to do, find the global.css from the source code, and you can delete everything, then paste this in. Basically, what I have prepared is, these classes. As you can tell, if you say home button nav primary, it's going to apply all these Tailwind CSS classes, okay? So that's what we are getting. We have some background classes. Let's just scroll to the top. Like as you can tell, they are generated with AI. It put all these comments so you can understand what they do. But other than these, what we have is, the previous orange theme color. Okay, so this is how I'm using AI day to day, just build premium UIs. So people think that my product is premium. And this is what I would recommend you to do as well, right? So as you can tell, we got the exact same end result with this one. So that's the end result, by the way, right? And this is what we are building at the moment. Let's try to delete these buttons. I think it is coming from the layout file, which we don't really need. I'm going to delete this entire header. Okay, so as you can tell, it looks absolutely amazing. And if there is anything that you don't like, you can always, select it from AI, reprompt it, just say something like, let me display pretty quickly. Let's just say you didn't like this part. You can select this, paste it to client and just say, build me a different version of it or come up with a creative UI, right? Make it look nice, but you would like to add more content or context. So you can just come up with it. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I have tried this multiple times until I get something like this, if you cannot get beautiful results in the first shot, that's completely fine. But that's how I use AI. As I said, I'm just always on the right hand side. AI can build anything, so I'm more excited than being depressed. Okay, so that was the hero section. Now we're gonna do the same thing for the rest of this page. So what do we have else? We have this section, right? We're gonna put this background image. And as you can tell, like you can read the code, I'm not going to walk you through it, but basically we are using a video element by passing the source that is coming from constants, right? Then you can scroll to the bottom, like you can literally pause the video and read this code for 5 minutes. We have the navbar itself, we have the links. We check if links include chevron element, like this one, it's going to display an icon. If not, it's not going to do it, right? So super simple, nothing complicated. We have the buttons for Clerk, sign in and sign out. And what else? We have the sign up button. Now, if user is signed in, here you would see studio button instead of sign in, right? Okay, so that's the entire file. I hope you don't mind it that we copy and paste, but guys, this is 2026. Like, I don't really want you to type these kind of stuff because no one do it, right? Like, everyone is using AI to speed up the process. Just learn how you can build these kind of beautiful UIs, and I show you the workflow. Just generate a premium image, right? Very nice looking. Then go ahead to a software like Clink or I don't know, anything, animate it, and then just put it as a video. And you can do this beautiful style, right? You can get this with AI. Okay, so we just wasted too much time, but I just wanted to explain everything, the workflow, so on and so forth. Now let's go under the page and build the next component. So right after this one, we're gonna get gallery showcase section. I'm gonna copy the name. Let's go under the components, create this. I'll say .tsx, and I'll just grab the code from source code. And I want you to do the same thing because this is just styling. We don't really want to waste too much time. Now here we will have some animations, and for this we are going to be using motion. Now head over to terminal and you can just say npm install motion. And since we are using motion, this should be a client component. Okay, let's try to see. I'm going to save this file and import this one. And what this does, basically, it is again using some constants. And the most important one here is the video source, right? We are getting it from ImageKit. Let's go here, scroll to the bottom. As you can tell, it looks pretty crisp and clean. We have this video in the background and some images. So again, these are the images that I have generated with AI. And how I have done this is basically I said, hey, ChatGPT, let's just talk about this image. I said, create me a 3D illustration that has the Pixar style. Okay, so it is this one basically. Let's say Pixar style 3D, like this kind of an illustration. And I said the guy is pouring some coffee to the cup, so on and so forth, and I just tried it multiple times for all of these until I get these beautiful results. Okay, so that's how you create these images. And by using the same kind of prompt, we will be creating these type of end results, right? It is called PixArt or Storybook 3D. And we'll get there once we create these images. Okay, now next, after this section, we are going to create how it works. Okay, so I'm going to go into right here. And I'll say how it works section. Let me just copy and paste it so that we don't waste time. I'll copy the name, go under the components, .tsx, and I'll say RNFE. Actually not RNFE, that was for React Native. I'm just going to delete the entire content and I will grab it from the source code. Here I think under the components, I would like to create another file called grid background. .tsx, because as you can tell, this has the grid background. And let me grab it from the source code as well. I want you to do the same thing. I just said to AI, here I open up the client. I said create me a grid background element that has literally a grid background. Now, in the first try, it created me a very large, these were very larger than this one, but I said, make it a bit smaller. So you just need to experiment with it, right? Multiple times until you get the result that you like. This is what I would like to have. So I'm just going to save it. And here we'll be using it. So I'm going to copy the entire code from source code. I want you to do the same thing. It is like 150 lines of code. We are using some constants, and here it says grid background. Okay, I think that should be the name of the file. I'm going to copy it. Wait, maybe I should copy this name and put it right here. Now let's take a look at the end result. I'll refresh. It didn't work. I think I need to save this file. First import it. Okay, now we can scroll to the bottom. As you can tell, we got this exact same output as we have in the end result. Now, some of you guys might get mad and say, hey, you're just copying and pasting. This is not teaching anything. But that's the world we live in now. It's 2026. Like, you don't need to write all of this by yourself because it doesn't contain any logic. And I would say, like, it's kind of like hot take, but I would say you don't even need to understand the code to be able to get this end result, right? This has no logic at all. But of course, when you have to build the features like sending a request to AI or optimizing the images, videos, these are the things that you need to understand and read the code, how that work. But honestly, myself, I wouldn't just care how they animate it, how this is animated with CSS going up and down. Like, this is something that I genuinely don't care. Okay, so for that reason, I'm gonna be copying and pasting. I hope you guys don't mind it. Now we are gonna build the pricing plan. This is coming from Clerk, and we will get there in a second. Just before we build it, we would like to have the testimonials. And how does this work? Like, how did I got inspired to get this component? So there is a website called 21st.dev. It's very, very cool. This is basically a resource that you can bookmark and don't forget about it. I am pretty sure that that's the file that I got this component from. So here you can search for testimonials. Wait, which one is it? Okay, so I think it's this one. You need to log in and then you can copy this prompt. So I'm going to go ahead and log in with my GitHub account, and they're using Clerk as well, right? Because it's the best authentication provider out there. So I'm going to say testimonial once again. Which one was it? Say testimonials. Okay, so it is this one. Now we can just copy the prompt, right? Like everywhere at this point, you need to use AI because we just have the prompts at this point. So I'm going to copy it, and I will maybe open up my terminal. Maybe before we do so, sorry, we would like to create that component. I will call it as testimonials. .tsx. Now I can open up my terminal, or I can use the client UI. Now, since we have already used this, I want to also show you the terminal version of it. Let's clear this up. You would say npm install -global or -g, and then you would install client. I have already done this. I'm just going to say client. Once you install it, you can just say client, and here we have the terminal. Now, again, if you want to update your model, you would put / and then you can say models, right? Then you can select any model that you would like to have. Now, in this case, these are all paid, unfortunately, because they are very good. But in our case, if you want to get a free model, just select it. Then here we can say, I will paste that command. Can I paste it? Okay, so this prompt that we just copied, we paste it, right? I'm going to say, make this under the, or implement this under the testimonials component, right? So testimonials.tsx, you can reference this file by adding the @ in front of it. Now I'll say for the colors, don't use any custom CSS colors, but use our CSS variables we have in global.css file. Let me just select this file. Now the reason that I say don't use any custom colors, because I want it to be in this exact same orange color that we have in our application, right? We don't really want to see something pink right here, right? Okay, so let's try to run this. I'm really curious what we're gonna get as the end result. When I tried it in this demo project, that's the end result I just got in the first shot. Let's see if it can do it once again. Okay, so hopefully, like as you can tell, that's the exact same testimonial section we have. Hopefully it should get the exact same one. Now, as you can tell, it is acting. If you wanted to switch to the plan mode, you can do so by pressing tab. But we don't really need to plan anything because we just copied and pasted our prompt from the 21 first.dev. Alright, so as you can tell, it's done successfully after a couple of seconds. It says task completed. I have successfully integrated and done all these steps that you can read. Let's just say it says I created this component, which is testimonial columns-1. We will see the content. Then it says I have updated this file, which is going to get the 9 different testimonials. Let's just see what we have. That's the file content that has been generated, and it is importing this component. Now, this is all done thanks to this prompt because they say this is how we implement it. AI, go ahead and implement the same thing. Let's try to import it under right here and just see if that's the end result we would like to have. I'll say import the testimonials. And then we are going to refresh. I think we need to mark this with use client because it is using motion. This should be a client component. That means it is not going to be rendered on the server side, right? Okay, let's scroll to the bottom. And here we go. We got almost the exact same end result that we have here. Now the background color is a little bit different than this one, but I think that's completely fine, so I'm not going to change it. If you want to, you can do so. Here we have some testimonials, as you can tell. Now, I have already provided them under the constants. Let's just see where that is. Let's just scroll to the bottom. As you can tell, we already have the testimonials. So instead of using these ones, I'm going to delete that. And instead, I'm going to use the one that I have in constants. So I want you to go ahead and delete everything you see here and just grab it from the source code, paste this in, you would like to import this, and all should be good to go. Again, refresh. Now, just in case if AI give you a different end result, what you can do, find the source code, copy everything and paste it. Now, I am pretty sure that AI will give you the exact same end result, but just in case, you cannot trust AI. Sometimes it gives you a different end result, so you can just copy and paste what I have from the source code. Now, in this case, there is one thing that I'd like to update. Here, instead of having this under the UI, I'll just put it under the components. Okay, so I'll just say update the import. And instead of having this name, I don't know why it put 1 at the end, so I'm gonna delete that. Maybe that's because this is the first example they have under the, this website, 21st.dev, because they have multiple examples for testimonials. Maybe this is called like 2, 3, so on and so forth. Okay, so I'm gonna delete this. I don't really want to have this suffix at the end, and I'm gonna say testimonials columns. Let's say update the import. And let's see if it is still working. I'm going to refresh. Yeah, it is just working as expected. Now I want to have this kind of background actually. So I'm gonna copy and paste it from my source code. Like it's the exact same thing. Just go ahead, delete this file, okay? And grab it from the source code. I will paste this in. Okay, that's the background we got now. The rest is the exact same thing. Now what are we gonna have after this is the footer element. Again, for the inspiration, I think I have visited this file and I said, show me some footer examples. Now you can see we have a bunch of different things. You can copy the prompt and paste it. In this case, I will just get the exact same thing that I have created. So I will go under the homepage. After the testimonials, I'm gonna say maybe just footer element, right? I'll copy this name. Under the components, I'll have this file. And I'm gonna get the file content from the source code. So once again, this is generated by AI. I'm not gonna act as if I have built it, but I just show you the the workflow, how to create these beautiful components using a service like this for absolutely free. Get the prompt and paste it to AI. And even if you don't have any money, you can use the free plan from Klein, right? It is pretty cool. And here, let's say you want to exit, you would just press 2. Or if you want to start a new task, you would press 1. In this case, I'll just press 2. Let's kill this, and everything should be fine. I think I need to rerun my app. I'll say npm run dev. And before that, let's save and import this component. And I just run my application. Let's try to test this out. At the very end, we have the footer element. So perfect, everything is working without any issues. The only thing that we are missing is the pricing element. Now for this, we're gonna go and visit Clerk dashboard because they have implemented this from scratch. So we don't need to build it all over again, right? So we'll go under the billing, which is under the beta, but it is working completely fine. I'll say enable the billing feature. I think we need to say, yeah, enable user billing, and we need to create a plan. Let's go here, subscription plans. Now we have 3 different plans, right? We have the free plan, pro plan, and studio, which is, $0, 12, and 29. And every single one of these is called a feature. Now you're gonna see how to implement that. First off, let's press to the free plan. We would like to add our very first feature, which is called 3 free generations, right? So here you can add that one. You can give it a name, which is going to be this itself. I'll say create this feature. If you wanted to, you could also add a, I think you just saw it, a description. But in this case, I'm going to skip that. Let's say save. This should be good to go. Now we'll go back and we will create another plan. I will call it as Pro Plan, then we will have the Studio Plan. So this is the name that your users will see, and if you want to select it from your code, you would use this ID, okay? So this is the key for your JavaScript code. If you want to give, you can give a free trial as well. I'm not going to give it because it would not be very profitable in this case. We already give them 3 generations in the free plan. Okay, let's just say save. Monthly base, of course we need to put this. I think it is $19. And then we'll say add a couple of more features. We will just say include this one already. On top of it, we're gonna get this one. And I think we don't need to include this one. Sorry, my bad. I'm not going to select this, okay? So here we'll say new feature, paste this in, create that one. Next, we're gonna get this. So in the Pro plan, they can get 75 different generations monthly. I'm gonna add another feature. Once this has been created, we can save. Then we can go back. Let's say under the plans, we'll get the studio plan this time. For the base fee, it should be $29 a month. You can also add the annual base fee. This is kind of like, you would say on monthly base, you would pay 29, but if you get yearly, you can pay like 25, right? You would just give them kind of like discount so they are convinced to buy the yearly plan. So you would be a little bit more profitable. Okay, now let's add, I think, yeah, 3 different features. Once again, we already have this one. It's the same, so you can reuse it from here. Then what else? I think I'll just say apply features to this plan. Then we will update this one. So this time it is 175. And finally, we're going to give them priority access. Okay, let's create this one as well. Then I'll say save this and it should be good to go. Okay, now we have all these plans, but how do we use it? Well, basically, Clerk has a component called pricing table. So all you have to do is just calling this component, and this should be it. Now we will customize it as well in a second. For now, let's just call the pricing table. Here it says this cannot be rendered when billing is disabled. I think we enabled that. Let's just scroll to the bottom now. As you can tell, we got this out of the box, right? We can subscribe to it. But first we need to log in, which is something that we will do. But basically, that's how easy it is to use it. You would just call the pricing table. Now, instead of doing it in this way, I would like to customize it a little bit because, our application is in dark mode. This is white, which is not acceptable. So what I'll be doing, I'm gonna cut this from here, and I will create a component called pricing. Let's just say pricing section.tsx, and we are going to import this one right here. But first we need to create the component. So I will get for now just a section that has the ID of pricing, some class names, and then the pricing table. We are going to be calling it. And let's try to call this method or the component, let's say pricing section, and import it right here. Now we can delete this pricing table, image, and button since we are not using it. So within this, we would like to have, let me display pretty quickly. We would like to have this kind of like header, the description, so on and so forth. Let's try to put it under a div. I'm going to create one div with the class name being mxAuto. I will say maximum width of 7x large. Within this, I'll have this div. Let's save and take a look at the end result. That's the exact same thing. Now, what do we want to have is the pricing table itself. So still within this div, I will just say, give me one more div, and it's going to get all these classes. And by the way, if you don't want to type this out, just grab it from the source code. Within this div, we're going to have the pricing table. Yeah, it should be this element. I'll just copy and paste. Now we would like to customize it, right? So that we can get these beautiful colors that is matching with the rest of our team. We will go here. First off, I'll say this will be for users, right? So you can pass this because by default, or not by default, but you can also pass the organization. In our case, let's just say this is specifically for our users. And now the most important part, if you want to update the appearance, you would pass the appearance right here as an object. And the idea behind it is that you need to pass an object by overriding the CSS variables that Clerk has. And for this, you can use AI to implement it, or you can waste your time just going to the Clerk documentation and then just say, theme customization, right? Let's just say customize, even though I have a typo. Like, you can go into the documentation, take a look at it in detail, or you can just say copy this as a markdown so that you can copy and paste to your LLM, aka your AI agent. Now in this case, that's what I have done actually before I record this video. I just said, hey AI, go ahead and implement the theme customization. But here I'll just show you how to do the exact same thing. So under the lib, I will create this file called clerk-pricing-appearance. You can call this anything, by the way, but that's the name that I came up with. Then we are going to copy and paste this content. I want you to get this from the source code and just paste it. Now we need to install the Clerk themes. So I'm going to copy it, open up a new tab, and I'll say npm install, paste this in. And while it is installing, you can click to these links and just see what Clerk implements, right? What they provide. Again, you can open this up in, ChatGPT, Claude, Cursor, so on and so forth. In this case, I have implemented that with Klein, which was done successfully. So just going to use the dark theme, and it's going to add these variables, which are our CSS colors, right? The orange theme. So that's the object, and we will basically copy this name, and instead of doing it inline, we will paste this right here. Let's save. Hopefully it should be working out. And as you can tell, it is right here with with the theme that we just override. Okay, so that was the pricing section. Now, just before we move forward, again, I want to talk about this because I can feel like as a beginner, it would be very depressing or it could be very confusing because you might be like, okay, AI can build anything and like, will I be replaced or, I don't know what to do in this case. Just be optimistic. Like, this is where I'm trying to stay most of the time. And I just can't stress this enough because if you take a look at the end result, this would take a couple of days to build from scratch. Like, so many styling, you need to come up with a bunch of different styling decisions to build it. But with AI, you can literally build it in like 2 hours or even less. You can build it in 1 hour, get these components, just paste the prompt, and AI does that. So I just try to show you the entire workflow. That's how I work at the moment with AI, with the styling especially, because now I genuinely, guys, like, I don't care about CSS classes at this point. If there is anything to be fixed, I would jump in and, try to do it manually, but that's like maybe 1% of the time, uh, but yeah, mostly what I care is the output. So I would just say, like, I can understand how it could feel as a beginner, especially, but just try to think about it in the positive way. Okay, so this is something that I wanted to mention because I see a lot of comments, people DM me, like send emails, feeling kind of depressed or confused. So yeah, like, keep that in mind. I would just say get $20 a month ChatGPT subscription. It's not that much. It could be a bit tough as a student, but I think you can just cut out all the expenses. Get $20 a month from ChatGPT. Then you can use something like Klein and basically connect it to your account so that you can use OpenAI for free and play around with AI to build more features, get the taste of it, so on and so forth. Okay, so with this, I think we are completely done with the home screen. There is just one thing that we are missing. If you try to say sign in, like, this is working nice, but in the end result, as you can tell, it looks pretty clean, right? It is again in our theme. It is matching with what we have, but here it is white. So how do we fix it? So for this, what we will be doing is the similar thing. We will go under the root layout this time. And here we will update the appearance, right? Now for this, I will give you another object. So I want you to go ahead under the lib. I'm going to say clerk dash model appearance .ts file. Do I have a typo? I think appearance should be in this way. Yeah, is it correct? I don't know. I think it's correct. Go ahead and grab this from the source code and paste this in. Again, all it does is updating the CSS variables from Clerk, and it is using our own custom CSS theme, right? So copy this or paste it, save this file. Then we'd like to get this object called Clerk model appearance, import it, and then it should be good to go. Now, as you can tell, that's the end result. Let's see here. Okay, it's been already updated, right? Now let's try to log in. Hopefully it should take us to the studio page. Now you might be asking why, because if you take a look at the home page, let me just see it. I'll say home hero section. The fallback redirect URL is studio. So once you're authenticated, it'll take you to the studio page, which is something that we're gonna build in the next section. For now, let's try to commit our changes. Okay, so here I'll go ahead, shrink everything, and maybe stage all of this by pressing to this button. Once it is staged, we can get the commit message. Okay, so if you're interested, you can read it, update it, but in my case, I'll just trust AI because it is just a commit message, not that important, and I'll say sync this up, which will take the latest changes and push it to our GitHub account. Okay, so with this, hopefully I'll see you in the next section. Alright, so this is where we left. Now in this section, we would like to build a schema because at the moment, if you take a look at our database, you're going to see that we don't really have any tables. So just select the project, go under the tables. We don't have any tables or any data at all. So we would like to start by creating a schema. Now for this, we will be using Drizzle. Let's open up our terminal. I'm going to just create a new terminal and then I'll say npm install it should be Drizzle ORM. So that's one thing that we will install. Then for the development purposes, we are going to install Drizzle kit. So you're going to see what they do. And while this is installing, we can go ahead and create a folder under the root. I'm going to call it as db. Now within this, I'll say schema.ts file, and we will get into the content. Let's open up the terminal. I will clear this up and I'll say this time npm install drizzle-kit, and this should be a development dependency. So I'm going to say -- save dev. Okay, so you're going to see why in a second. And now what we're going to have in our database, right? What are we going to have in our table? So of course we are going to have an ID. Then we would like to store the image URL. We would like to store the model because user can use, let's say, OpenAI model, I don't know, let's say version 1, or they can use version 1.5. So this will be a bit more expensive than this one because, you know, it's a better image generation model. Now, let's say you don't really know the syntax of the result, right? Well, in this case, you can use AI to generate this file. And let me show you the workflow. So I'll clear up my terminal and I'll just say cline. Okay, so this is going to get the cline in the terminal. And here I'd like to select a different model than the free one. So let's go with the best model at the moment, which is Cloud Opus 4.6. Okay, so here I'm going to paste a prompt that I have prepared. And here you can see that's the prompt. So we will say write db schema.ts file for Drizzle and Postgres. It is going to have a generations table with UUID primary key. And then we'll have a Clerk user ID, an optional original file name, source image URL. You can see the rest. And this is going to export it as the generations. Okay, so I'm going to copy this and put it right here as my prompt, right? Here it says 0 lines. I think this is correct because I just copied it. So I'm going to run this. And let's wait what we're going to get in this file. So this is basically the workflow that you should keep in mind at this point. Let's say you don't really know the syntax or you don't really want to type out by yourself. Then just get an English sentence that explains everything. And here we go, it created the entire file. So we have everything. I think this is completely true. I'll just double check from my notes. But I think, yeah, that's true. So this ID is for the generation itself. And this one is for the Clerk user ID. Because if you think about it, let me pretty quickly display. So here, what we have is Neon, right? Which is our database. So I'm going to say db. Then what else we have is Clerk. So I'm going to just say Clerk. Okay, so they are completely two different services, right? Neon and Clerk. This is for the database and that's for the authentication. They don't really know, they don't really have a way to communicate. So what we'll be doing is that as we store the users here, we will just have a reference to that user IDs so that we know which user is which one, right? And also we know which generations belong to which user. Okay, so it's for like the relationship, I would say. So that's the syntax that you don't really need to memorize or completely understand. It just feels like an English sentence. We have the key. This is what we'll be using in JavaScript code. And this is what we're going to have in the database as the column name. Okay, so I'm going to save this and let's try to have another file that you need to have, which is going to be Drizzle kit. Sorry, Drizzle config, not kit. So it's going to be drizzle.config.ts file. And this should be under the root and the file content will be around 10 lines of code. So I'm going to go ahead, copy and paste. What we have is the .env config import so that we can get the database URL from the env file. And then we got the Drizzle kit where we have define config. So this is just a method that we export and we pass an object. We say we would like to use Postgres, because here you can also pass something like MySQL, or let's actually see all the options. As you can tell, we'll be going with Postgres. We say here is our schema file, right? That's the path. Our Auth directory will be Drizzle. Here is our DB credentials and some extra options. Okay, save this file, and finally we will go under the package.json file, and then under the scripts I will have a db push script. Now technically you can call this anything, right? You can just say hello as well, but it should be something readable and make sense. So in this case we are going to be using the package called Drizzle kit, which is for development purposes. So we're going to say use Drizzle kit and push. What this is going to do is that it's going to take this schema and push it to our database. Because if you think about it, at the moment, this is just a local file that we created. Neon has no idea about this file. If you refresh, right, we still don't have anything here. But if we run the script, so let me just prove you, we don't really have anything here. You need to open up your terminal. I think we can exit this. I'll just press 2, and I'm going to say clear this up. Now I can say npm, and we're going to run this command. Oops, what have I done? Let's just say npm run db push. So I'm going to run this. Hopefully it should work out. It says please install either PG or Postgres. Okay, I think we forgot to install this package, which is Neon Database Serverless. So I'm going to copy the name. I'll say npm install, paste this in. Okay, now we can rerun this. Okay, so as you can tell, it's trying to make the call, connect to it. Here I'll just say, let me just maximize it. So I'm going to say, yes, I want to execute all statements. Changes applied. Let's double check. I'm going to refresh. Hopefully we should have that table with all the columns that we have defined. Okay, here we go, generations, that's the name of the table. And then we have all these files that we created. Now you can create more tables if you're interested. All you need to do, just go here, let's say this time you would have the, I don't know, let's say books table, right? You would say Postgres table, that's the name of the table. Then you would have your fields, okay? So you would just put everything here, and then you would rerun this command. Then it would take this and push it to Postgres or the Neon dashboard. Alright, so that's the schema file. Now we will create an index.ts file within the db folder, and this is going to get a database instance so that we can communicate with our database in a couple of minutes. So here this will be pretty easy to implement, maybe like 10 lines of code. We would like to import the Neon instance from this package that we just installed. Then from Drizzle ORM, we're going to get the Drizzle, let me zoom in. Okay, we're going to get the Drizzle object. Now from the schema, we're going to import everything. So I'll just say import everything as schema, and we'll say from add, let's say db schema. Now, if you're confused about this, let me pretty quickly explain. So just imagine here you would have multiple objects. Like you would have the users table, you would have books, so on and so forth. You can just say import all of them as schema. Then you can say schema dot, users or generations or books. So you got the point, right? So it basically wraps everything under a single object. Now I'm going to delete this one because we don't really need it. Now what we'll be doing is to get the database URL from the .env file. Okay, so I'll say if this is not provided, we can throw an error by saying missing database URL. But else we can create a SQL instance. I'm going to say call the Neon and pass our database URL. Then finally, we're going to export a variable called db. This will call the Drizzle. We're going to pass our client, which is the SQL object, and then we're going to have our schema. Since they're the same thing, we can shorten it. Okay, now anytime we would like to communicate with our database, we're going to be calling this object. So we're going to say things like, I don't know, like db.insert, delete, update, so on and so forth. And let's actually start doing it. We will create a couple of different functions under a file, You can call it anything, but I'll just say generations.ts. So within this file, we are going to have a method which is going to get the past generations of the user. And I just realized I have a typo. Let me fix it. Generations, it should be. Okay, so as I said, it's going to get the history. Because if you take a look at the studio page, this is the end result. We have a section called history where user can see their past generations, right? And we're going to be fetching this data by creating a method right here. First off, I'll get my imports. So we're going to get the DB object from, let's go under, sorry, this is not correct. The DB is going to be under the DB and index file, right? We're going to get the generations table from the schema, and then from Drizzle ORM, we're going to get these values, and you're going to see how to use it. Now, within this file, we will also calculate how many generations this user left. Because if you take a look at it here, this user is on the Pro plan, which means they can get 75 generations per month. And here it says you already use 6 of them. Now you have 69 generations left, okay? And to be able to calculate it, we need to get the start of this month. Now this is a method that I generated with AI, I'll be honest. As you can tell, we get the date, and then like there is some magic going on. If I have to be honest, if you delete it and tell me to type this out, I couldn't, and I genuinely don't care, because this is something that I don't need to memorize or completely be able to do by myself. It is just a utility method, right? Okay, so that's the method, we'll be using it. Then we can count the generations since a date. Now, this is a method I'll just paste in. You can get it from the source code. You know, the point of this project is to not type everything out, but instead understand everything, how everything comes together as one piece. Okay, so this is the method, as the name suggests. This is going to count the generations since the date. So this will get the Clerk user ID so that we know which user that we are looking at. Then here it says await database and select. Now this is going to count the rows, okay, so that we know how many generations this user has from the generations table. And here's our query. So this is literally some SQL code, but it is written with Drizzle. Then we are going to return the row, and we are going to convert it to be a number because this could be string. And if this is undefined, we'll just say return as 0, okay? So that's the entire logic. I hope it's not confusing. You don't need to memorize any of these syntax, just understand what this does. And then we will get a method which is going to get the history. So again, I'll paste this in. It's very, very simple to understand. It goes under the DB, selects everything from the generations table, where this is the user, right? And we say order by with the created at date in the descending order, so that we see the latest one up here, right? And this is the first one created, like from the latest one to the newest or the oldest one. So that's why we are using the order by method. And then finally, we're going to have one method where we can create a generation. So when user uploads an image, right, and then they say generate, once AI generated the image, we would like to save it to the database. So we're going to call this method called create generation by passing an input. Here for now, I have the type of any, we will fix it. But basically, we are calling the insert method under the generations table. Then we pass the values, which is our input, and then we just call the returning so that we can return that result. And we just return it out of this method. Now for the input, what are we going to have? Well, let's just create a type that is called insert generation input. And I will provide it right here. So this will be a type. What we do is that we infer the insert model from the generations. Okay, so this is going to get everything but not ID or the created at date. Because if you want to create something, both of these will be generated automatically by the database, right? So when you create something, you don't really pass ID or the created at date. Okay, I hope that makes sense. That's TypeScript specific. This has nothing to do with Next.js or React. Okay, so that's the entire file. Once again, we just have maybe like 3 different methods to manipulate our database. Here we try to select the data. Here again, we're using to just read some data, right? Select it. But here we would like to insert something into the database. Alright, so that's it for this file as well. Now, I know that you're pretty excited to jump in and get started with the UI and make it work. But first, we have to set up a couple of more different things. So let's just handle the backend logic completely, and then we'll jump into UI, so it'll be very easy to build and implement it. Like this is just CSS, don't worry about it, we'll get there. For now, just try to understand everything, like how everything comes together as one piece. Now, the other thing that we would like to set up, let's close everything, go under the lib, we're gonna set up the image kit. It'll be pretty easy to set up actually. I'll just say imagekit.ts file, and I think we need to install the package they have. I will open up my terminal. Let's try to clear this up. So I will say npm install add imagekit /next, and we will do the same thing. Let's say imagekit, this time Node.js. We are going to be using both of these. So imagekit next and Node.js. We are going to be using both of them. And they are coming from the documentation. Okay, so you can always double check by going into imagekit and just say Next.js. Like how to use it, they have a very easy to understand quick start. But I'll try to walk you through it in this project within this file. I'm going to kill this. Let's build this file where basically we would like to have one image kit client that is going to allow us to communicate with our image kit dashboard or the project. So what I mean, let's go into dashboard. So here we would like to create images, right? But we don't really want to come here and manually drag and drop. When user creates an image, it should be uploaded to ImageKit automatically. And we're going to make it work from our code. So this client instance will allow us to do everything programmatically. Okay, if you don't understand it, I think it'll be clear in a second. Let's import ImageKit and toFile method from ImageKit.js. And then we're going to create a client instance. Now, basically, let me delete this part. So this is the JavaScript version of it, but what we'll be doing, we're going to add TypeScript on top of it. So we're going to say this could be either null, which is the initial value, or it could be the instance type of ImageKit. Okay, so we have a warning at the moment. It says you're not using the client. We'll get there. And by the way, this is a convention. Let me delete this part. So you might be asking, why don't we call it as client, but instead we have it as _client. So this means this instance is private to this file. You shouldn't really export it or use it other than this file. Okay, now we'll get a method. Let's say function get client. Now this is coming from ImageKit documentation. I'll try to explain. So basically this is going to return the client object, right? Which is this one. But initially it was equal to null. So we're going to say if it is null, then go ahead and get an ImageKit instance. So this will cache it. If we already have that, we'll just return it, right? But if we don't have it, we will recreate it. So this is what we call the singleton pattern. I will leave it as a comment if you would like to have it in the source code. This is a singleton pattern which is used to create a single instance of the ImageKit client so that you don't accidentally create multiple instances, right? Okay, so that's the singleton pattern. Keep that in mind. Then we will have a method. I'll just copy and paste. I know there's a lot of copy and pasting, but like what's the difference between pasting this or just saying return _client? I'm just trying to more explain rather than typing, and I hope you guys don't mind it. So we have 10 lines of code here. This is a method where we got the params. Then we add the type just to make TypeScript happy and have type safe code base. So we got the buffer. You can think of it like the image itself, but it is in bytes. Then we have the file name, folder, and meme type. So is it PNG? Is it JPEG? WebP? Things like that. And then the folder that we will be uploading. So here, yes, you can create folders. I think we can do it manually as well. So basically, we're going to have one folder for every single user so that we can have everything as, organized. And then we have the file name. So what this does is that it's going to get the client by calling this method. Then it is going to call this method so that we can upload the file, right? Or it's going to maybe convert it to a file. Then we'll upload it. Here we also use the unique file name so that we don't really have the same file name twice. And then finally, we return two different fields, which is the URL as well as the file ID. Now let's say I explained something but you didn't quite understand well, or it's my bad that I couldn't explain in the best way possible. So what you can do, you can just copy this entire file and come here, either in your terminal or right here under the client. You can just paste this in and you can say, can you please explain this file in detail to me? And then you can say something like, I'm a beginner. I don't know what a buffer is, right? Let me select one of the best plans, which is going to be Anthropic. Wait, I think I should just zoom out. I can't see anything. It's like too zoomed in. Here I'm going to say client, recommended. I'll get the Cloud Opus 4.6. Let's say done. As you can tell, it's been updated. Now I can say, just send it. It'll explain everything. So this is one of the other things that you can always do in tutorials, or let's say you just got a code base or AI generated something, you can just ask it to explain you in detail as if you're a complete beginner. So as you can tell, after a couple of seconds, it is going to explain everything in super detail. You can just zoom out, maybe maximize this, and read it like what is happening, what is going on, and you can even ask more follow-up questions. So as I said, that's the singleton pattern, like it explains in detail. You can ask, why do we have underscore at the beginning, right? It's going to explain what's the point behind it. Okay, so this is something that I wanted to mention as well. And I believe with that, we are done with the imagekit.ts file as well. I'll zoom in, let's close this. Now we will create the OpenAI file under the lib. I'll say OpenAI.ts. Now we will be creating these images with OpenAI, right? So we need to visit OpenAI dashboard and get an API key. Now, unfortunately, you need to pay something like $5 so that you can have some credits and generate these images. Now, as far as I know, when you sign up for the first time, OpenAI will give you $5 credits so that you can test this out. But sometimes it is not very consistent and it doesn't give you that credit. In that case, you need to upload it. So in my case, I have like maybe $15 that I have uploaded, and I'll be using that API key and I'll show you the process. But I think $5 is something that we all can afford. So just go ahead and upload $5 and then we'll test this out. So you need to visit platformopenai.com and create an account. Then I think under the home screen, this would be the dashboard where you can add some credits. Now for this, you need to, of course, provide your card information. In my case, I have, I think, $10. In total, I spent $4. Now I left $6 within this account. Then once you upload some credits, I think the minimum you can upload is 5. That would be enough. Just go ahead and get $5. Then you will go under the API keys. Then you can create an API key or a secret key. Okay, so just give it a name. I'll just say maybe tutorial. For the permissions, I'll leave it all. Project could be default, and I'll say create the secret key. Now, once you create it, you need to copy it because you will not be able to copy it again, okay? Just copy it. And once you say done, now you cannot get this again. And then we will visit the .env file and we're gonna paste this value. So here I will have something like open_AI_API key. Let me zoom in. Then you would like to paste your value. Now what I have here, just don't try to use it because I'm going to delete it before I publish this video. Just get your own API key right here. Okay, so I'm going to save this file and actually I will get the API key that I used in, yeah, I think this should be fine. Okay, so I'll leave this file as it is. Go ahead and grab your API key. Then we will set this up within this file called openai.ts. Now within this file, we are going to be using a package that we need to install. So I will zoom in, open up my terminal. Let's clear this up. I'll say npm install. First off, let's install the AI package. This is something that we will be using. And the other thing we will have is the AI-SDK/OpenAI. So go ahead and get both of these packages. And here we will be using the AI SDK OpenAI. So get this import called create OpenAI. Then we will get our API key from the .env file. So I'm going to paste this in as my API key. Then we will get a variable. So I'll say export const OpenAI provider. Then I can say if we have an API key, go ahead, call this method and pass our API key. But in the else case, we can just return as null. If you wanted to, you can throw an error if user doesn't have the API key. But in this case, I'll just leave it as null. We can handle it later in the video. Now, after this file, we can create another file under the lib. This is going to be helpful for the incoming sections. So I'm going to say openai-image-models.ts. Now here from OpenAI, we are going to be using two different models. If you take a look at the screenshot, you're going to see that user can select the model that they would like to use. So we have the GPT image 1, and if they press this drop down, there will be also 1.5, okay? Two different options, and we're going to put it right here. So you can grab this file content from source code. It is like 10 lines of code. Okay, so these are the image models. Then we get the type. This is just TypeScript. So we basically say get the type of this models. And then here we just have an object. As you can tell, that's the key, that's the value. And then we say make it type safe. Here we'll just say this is a record. Here is the type of the key, and that's the type of the value. Okay, now another file that we will create is for the prompts, because like if users select this model, we will tell AI to generate a storybook 3D preset, right? Like I think you'll understand what I mean. Let's go under the lib. I'm gonna create this file called style, let's say presets.ts, and go ahead to get this file from the source code. This is something that I have prepared, and I'll just walk you through it. Okay, so first off, we have the type, so we pass it here. If you don't pass the type, this is how it would look like. So we say every single object is gonna have these keys. So as you can tell, we have storybook 3D, then we have anime cell, so on and so forth. So in total, we have 6 different objects. And this is the prompt that we're going to be passing to OpenAI. So in this case, for the storybook, it says transform the uploaded image into a premium storybook inspired 3D illustration. You can read the rest. But yeah, that's basically the prompt. Here we will pass it to AI. And at the very bottom, we have a method. When you pass the slug, it's gonna return you the object. So here, let's say you pass marble sculpture, it's going to return this object. So super simple, nothing complicated. For that reason, I will leave this file as it is. Now the other helpers that we need to create will be under the utils. So again, you can find it from the source code. I know it could be kind of annoying to copy and paste, but these are the things that are gonna save us a lot of time. So I'm gonna just paste it here. Here we have two different methods. This is going to format the date, and this method is going to download the image. So how that works is that it's going to fetch the image URL from ImageKit or whatever the URL is. Then it's going to create a link element, as you can tell. Then it's just going to click to it. So basically, when you press these buttons, right, it's going to download the selected image. And once again, these are the methods that I have generated using AI. In this case, Klein. I would just say, create me a method that is going to download the image URL, right? This is going to take the arguments, so AI is going to figure out and just build it. This is what happened in my case. Now, I don't want to make this section any more complicated, so I'm just going to close everything, and we can commit our changes and hopefully, continue in the next section. So what we have done in this section is that we have set it up our database where we have our schema, we have the index file where we create an instance so that we can communicate with our database. Then we have some queries and mutations where we interact with our database, as you can tell. And then we created some helper files that we are gonna need in the next sections. Okay, so I'll go here, maybe stage everything. For the commit message, I'll let AI to find out. Okay, so this is what we got from AI. I'll just say commit and sync this up. Okay, so with this, hopefully I'll see you in the next section. Alright, so this is where we left. In this section, let's get started with our API routes. So we already have one under the API folder called the Sentry example. This was just an example that Sentry provides us so that we can test out the errors. But now we are going to create an actual route that we will be using. So I'm going to call this as as upload. And within this, we'll have route.ts file. So basically, we're going to send a GET request to this endpoint, and it's going to be looking like this. Let's just say we'll have a fetch request to /API because that's the folder name it is in, and then the folder name, which is upload. So that's the convention. I think you already know this. If you want to have some API routes, that should go under the app, under the API folder. And then you can call these folders anything that you wish. In our case, we are going to have the upload endpoint. So this is going to be a GET request. So let's try to delete this. We'll go right here, and then we will just export an async function. Let's say this will be a GET request, and then we're going to delete the params. We don't really need it. I'll just get a couple of different imports that we are going to be using. So from the Clerk, we're going to get the authentication, and we're going to get this method from ImageKit. You will see why. We will get Sentry as well as the next response from Next.js. Okay, so I'm going to get the user ID by calling this method. So I'm going to say await the auth. And if there is not a user ID, that means user is not authenticated, right? So I'm going to say if this is undefined or null, we are just going to say 401, which means unauthorized. And we will just return out of this method. But in the else case, that means user is authenticated. So I can just keep going with the actual function logic. So here I'm going to call this method called get upload auth params. This is coming from the ImageKit documentation. Okay, you don't need to memorize it, but just understand what we are doing here. So we're going to pass an object. As you can tell, it wants you to pass something like token, expire, public key, and private key. I think these are optional, but you need to pass the public key as well as the private key, right? As you can tell, these are optional with the question mark. This is what that means. So we're going to pass the public key and private key in a second. And this is going to return us the token. It's going to return us the expire as well as the signature. Okay, now here let's just pass the private key as well as the public key. I'm going to be grabbing them from the env file, just like that. Now we don't really have any warnings. Now if you delete this, it's going to say maybe this is undefined. So I'll just say don't worry, it is always under the env file. Now make sure these names are matching exactly what you have right here. So let me find it. ImageKit public key, right? This name should be exactly like this. Same for the private key. Okay. So I'm just going to delete this extra space so it is kind of like a bit more organized. And now that we got all these values, we can just return it as a response from this endpoint. So I'll paste this in. We say return next response.json, send the token, expire, signature, as well as the public key. So once again, these are coming from the ImageKit documentation. Basically, we will send a request to this endpoint, right? To the upload endpoint. We're going to get these values, and by using them, we can upload the images to ImageKit programmatically, right? Okay, now we are not using Sentry here because I'd like to first give you a background on the diagrams, and then we'll jump here and then, like integrate it. Alright, so let's jump into diagrams and I'll try to walk you through it why you might want to use Sentry in the first place. Okay, so let's start with the question. What do you think will happen when your users face some errors? Do you think they will send you an email so that you can fix those errors? Or do you think they will delete the application? So if it is a mobile app, they would definitely delete it. Or if it is a web app, they would just close that website, right? They would never come back. So you don't really want this to ever happen, or at least you want to minimize it. And for this, you can set up Sentry in your project so that when your users face some errors, Sentry is going to immediately send you an email like, hey, there is an error on this project. That's the reason. You can immediately click to it and then come into your dashboard, then immediately see all the details. And there is even session replays. So it looks like these are all the errors that we got so far in this application. So I can just see it in my dashboard. So there is even replays, like you can click to it. And once you click to it, it's going to show you the session replay. So what is happening in your app, how your users are using it. Now, in this case, everything is censored or encrypted. But if you wanted to, you can update it from your code base. I think I can display it pretty quickly. Let's go back to VS Code. Under the, let me find it. Maybe on the client side. Here, I think we had things like mask. Okay, so I think under the replay integration, there are things like mask all inputs. You can just say that's equal to false. You can do the same thing for this one so that it doesn't mask everything, right? Just know that something like this existed, but this is the default behavior. And then you can also assign these errors to your different teammates. Now in this project, the only owner is me, but just imagine if this was a company project. Here you would have a bunch of different teammates, right? And you could assign these errors to specific users. Then you could update the priority. This could be high, medium, or low. And you can even set this up with something like Slack so that you are not only getting emails, but also you're seeing these errors immediately in your Slack channel, right? So the entire team will be notified by these errors. Okay, so that's one of the use cases. Now there is one thing called Sentry logs, and this is what we'll be using in this project. You can think of it like a replacement to console log, and here is a quick comparison the differences between console.log and Sentry logs, right? Why not just use why not just use console log in your application, but instead also integrate Sentry logs? So the idea is simple. Console log only lives on user's device, right? But on the other side, Sentry logs is stored on the cloud. So you will be able to see it right here. I think under the Explorer, you have an entire dashboard for the logs. They are persisted and searchable. They are structured, which means you can query them. And they are linked to traces, errors, and even session replays. But that's not the case on console.log. They basically disappears when app closes, right? And it is just plain text. They have no connection to errors. Okay, so I think that's a very nice table to understand the difference between them. And here I have a real world scenario so that you can see the actual benefit. Now, in our application, we are the only user, right? So you might not be able to see the actual use case, but here just imagine you build an e-commerce application where you have 50,000 users and 500 checkouts daily. And let's say one of them will fail, right? Or some of them will fail daily. If you just use console log, you might not have nothing, right? Or literally you have nothing because user will say it didn't work and you cannot really do anything about it. But with Sentry logs, if user says, it didn't work, you can just get their user ID and you can check for the action. So here you could add your queries under the logs, then you would be able to see what is going on. Like I think here we already have some logs from this application and you will be able to see it right here. Then you can search for it, you can add some queries, and then you can just tell them, hey, it's your end, like the problem is on your end, your credit card declined, or you don't have enough balance. So here is another example scenario. Let's say you're going to get a ticket from your team that says this user couldn't check out 2 hours ago. You would go to your Sentry dashboard and then you would say, search for this user ID. And then you would be able to see the full timeline. Was it an info log? Was it an error log? And you would be able to see the timestamps and the details. Like here, they started the checkout. Then you can see the payment sheet initialized, but somehow it failed. Then you can click to it, see all the details, and you can even watch the replay so that you can watch exactly what the user saw. And here's an example of using it. We will just see it in code as well, but I wanted to show it as an image so that you can get like an idea. You would say sentry.logger.info. Now, this is one of the, and here's an example usage. We will see it in code as well, but I just wanted to include it in the diagrams as well. So you would say sentry.logger.info. Now, this is one of the options. We also have, error, warning, things like that. And I'll show you all of them in a second. Then you would add the log title or the text. Then you can add some attributes. And this is where you can add your queries, right? So here you can just come and check for something like total, which is greater than 5 or 500. Okay, so these are the attributes that you can add on your logs. And then in this example, like you can just say how many checkouts failed today or versus yesterday, right? Then you can say show me all checkouts over 500 that failed. So these are the benefits of using logs in the first place. So if we have to put it in 2 sentences, Sentry logs turn your application into a searchable and traceable system instead of a black box. The value explodes at scale when you need to debug issues across thousands of users. Okay, so I hope that gives you an idea, and let's try to see a very basic usage right here under the raw.ts. So let's say we have handled the authentication check. Now we can just add a sentry. Let me just type this out. We'll say sentry.logger.info. And as you can tell, we have a bunch of different options like, trace, warn, we have fatal, error, and debug. Now this FMT is something that you would use to add formatting, right? This is the usage, but for the rest of them, they are just methods that you would call. So in this case, I can add an info, and my message would be something like image kit.upload auth issued. So this is going to tell me that user authentication or the authorization did not failed, and this user was able to actually generate the auth params, right? So that means image kit upload auth issued successfully. We are gonna see more examples on the Sentry logs a little bit later in the video. Okay, so I hope you got the point. Now let's try to close this file and we will create another API route. Just before we do so, I would like to create one more file so that we can check the quota on the generations, because some users can only have 3 generations. If they're on the Pro plan, they will have 75, and if they're on the Studio plan, they will have 175, right? Now let's create this file called generation-quota.ts. So first off, I will import a type from Clerk backend. We're going to be using this in a second. And then we can import 2 different things. The UTC month start, that's the method that we created. I think this got the type. Oh, sorry, no, it got the method itself. That's the type right here. And then the other one is going to be count generations since. Okay, so these are the methods that we have already generated, and we are going to be using them right here. Now what I'd like to do is to create a type. So I'm going to say export this type called generation quota snapshot, which is going to have limit, used, and remaining. All of them are numbers. So this is just a type we'll be using later in the video. Then we can get the billing plans. So I'll say export const billing underscore plan keys. Now, if you remember, we had 3 different keys, right? The free plan, pro plan, as well as the studio plan. So I will store them as a variable, as a hard-coded variable, and I'll say this should be as const so that users or the developers cannot update it. Now, right below to this, we are going to have the limits. So in the free plan, we will have 3, pro plan, and studio plan. Now, we will have a method. I'll say export async function. I think not async, just a function. And the name for this is going to be get monthly generation limit. Now this will get the has as the argument, and I'll explain what that is. And let's say from this method, we'll just return a number. Okay, now before we build this method, let's take a look at the Clerk documentation. Since we are using the billing from Clerk, can get this URL, or just go under the Next.js billing and billing for B2C, which means business to consumer, right? So we have already used the pricing table, but there is more to it. So you can check if a user is in one of your plans. So let's say you would call this method called has, and then for the plan, you would just pass your plan name. So in our case, we have free plan, pro, and studio. And I think they have an example. So here they call the auth get the has, and then they say check if this user has the bronze plan. If not, they'll say you need to subscribe to get access to it, but else it says you're on the bronze plan, right? So this is the same logic we are going to be doing, but instead of calling this, we will just pass it as an argument to this method. Okay, so let's give the type for it. This will be session auth object, which is something that we imported as the type, and we'll just get the has from here. This is just to make TypeScript happy with the types. So here I'll say if this user has, and we're gonna say plan, and we will get started with the studio plan. So we'll say billing plan keys the studio. So we will say if they're on the studio plan, we're going to give them this amount of generations, right? That's the limit. So we'll say return monthly generation limits the studio. And I will copy this, paste it once again. We will check if they're on the pro plan. Then we're going to send this amount of numbers as the limit. But if this is none of the case, we'll just give them 3, right? So I'll say monthly generation limits dot free. Instead of doing this, you could also just say 3, but just imagine later at some point you change your idea, right? And you wanted to have 10. So instead of coming here and updating both, all you need to do is updating this part. So it is better to have it in this way, right? Just be consistent with the rest of your code base. Okay, why this is not happy? It says individual declarations in merged must be all exported or all local. So first off, I'm going to save this file. So I just realized here I am importing them. I don't know why. I'm going to delete this. Now it is working as expected. Okay, so we're going to have one more method, which is going to get the generation coda snapshot. Now, what does that mean? I will show you what that means from the end result. So from this account, as you can tell, we have 3 generations, right? This is how much we left, how much we used, and what's the limit. So we'd like to return these values so that we can use it in the studio page. So this is that method. You can grab it from the source code or just type this out. It is maybe 10 lines of code or even less. This is getting 2 different params called has and clerk user ID. Then it's gonna get the limit, and then it's gonna get the used amount of generations, right? And then we're gonna return the limit, used, and how many remaining. Remember, these are the values that we're gonna be using right here. This is the limit, this is how much used, and this is the remaining. Now this user is on the free plan, but let's try to go into home screen and actually try to subscribe one of these paid plans. So I'm gonna go with the pro plan. Now we can put your card information, but since we are in the development mode, we can also use the test card, right? We don't really want to pay actually for this project. So I'm just gonna say use the text card, the test card. Clerk is going to handle it. As you can tell that now we are subscribed successfully. I'll say continue. Hopefully we should be able to under the studio screen. Now, as you can tell, everything has been updated. We have 75 generations for this account. So this is how our application will work as well. At the moment, we just don't have the UI, but this is something that will get there in a couple of minutes. Okay, so I think we got the point. That's the entire file. We just have 2 different methods that we created, and then we have some, let's say, constants as well as types. Now with this, we can get started with the other route, which will be under the app API, and this is going to be called as a generate image. So I will create my folder, and then within this, I'll have route.ts. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this is going to be a bit longer file, right? Maybe like 200 lines of code, but it is mostly logic where we handle, Sentry logging, we are handling the authorization, authentication, and all kinds of errors. I'll try to explain everything as we go through it. Now there is one thing that I'd like to mention and you need to realize. So here user is going to upload an image and we'd like to keep track of the size of it. So basically if user uploads a square image as the output, we'd like to give them a square image as well, right? So we need to keep track of the width as well as the height. Then if they pass, let's say in this kind of a format, I think this is what we call 9 to 16, right? So the width is 9 and height is 16. We would like to give them the exact same size of result. Same thing here, if it is a rectangular, let's say this is like x and this is 2x, we would like to give them the same output. Now, how do we keep track of it, right? How do we know the size of the image? So there is a method called sharp. You can take a look at it, just say npm sharp. You can see the details. I think it is installed 55 million weekly, so probably one of the most popular packages out there, and we'll be using it to implement that. So here I'll get the type. So I'm going to say type edit image size. It could be one of them, either square or rectangular or the other way around. Now I'll have the runtime as well. I'm going to say the runtime should be Node.js so that we can use that sharp method successfully. Now the other thing that we can do, let's just create the method. This is something that I have generated with AI. I'll just copy and paste and I'll try to walk you through it. So we'll import the sharp, like don't worry, like we explain everything right here. I'll get into it. Let's say import sharp from the sharp module. Okay, now you might be asking, hey, we didn't install it, but that's fine. It'll be used since we are using the Node.js runtime. Okay, so as you can tell, this is going to get the image buffer, and you can think of it like the image, but in bytes. And then we will get the metadata by using the sharp module. So it's going to get the metadata where you can get the width and height. Just in case if any of them not possible or not visible to access, we'll just return the square as the size. But else we're going to get the width and height, get the aspect ratio, and here we have some calculations. Depending on that, we will give the related values. I hope that makes sense. Nothing complicated at this point. You can read the comments. This is what I have generated with AI. I basically opened up my client terminal and then I said, give me a method where we can infer the image size from the image buffer. And I didn't even say like use the sharp method, okay? And it created right here. So that was just something to keep in mind. Now this is the method that we'll be using. And since this is a route, and like specifically this will be a post method. So I'm going to say async function post, and then we can get the request. And you can add the type as well, which will be a request. And let's get into it. So first off, I'm going to be calling the auth from Clerk. We are going to get the has method as well as the user ID. So I'm going to import it from Next server. Now, once we get these values, we can add some validations. So I'm going to say if there is not user ID, that means user is unauthorized. So let's import next response and send a 401 as the response, right? Which means user is unauthorized. Now we're going to call two different methods so that we can get the monthly limit. These are the methods that we created. And then we're going to get how many of them used this month. And these are the parameters that we're going to pass. Now, if used this month is greater than the monthly limit, right? Let's say if used this month is greater than or equal to monthly limit. In this case, we can throw an error. We'll say you don't left any other generations, right? So I'm going to return this as the response. You can put anything here. This is the one that I came up with. You can send a code, limit, used, and then the status code, which is kind of like rate limiting, right? It is like a limit reached. And I also want to have this in my Sentry dashboard as a log. So I'm going to say send this as a warning instead of an error. Like if you wanted to, you can use the error as well, but I'll be going with the warning. And let's import Sentry. We will just say generation quota exceeded. That's the message. And then we can add some attributes like how many of them used and what's the limit. I'll go at the very top and import everything as Sentry from, I think, at Sentry Next.js, and this should be good to go. And then after this if check, we'll have another one. So I'm going to import the OpenAI provider, and we'll say if this is not existed, right? I'm going to say if this is undefined or nullish. In this case, we can return an error. We'll say missing OpenAI API key. Okay, so that's another validation we are going to have. And then we can get the body from the request. So you would say await request.json. So this is all good, but the only problem here is that this is not type safe. It says that type is equal to any. So we can wrap this with the brackets, and we can just say typecast this as generate image request, which is a type that I'll generate at the very top. So I'm gonna go at the very top, maybe right after this. I'll paste this in. So we are expecting from user to pass these values, like the source image URL, the meme type, like is it PNG, JPEG, so on and so forth, the original file name, style slug, as well as the AI model. So we'll get this type and typecast it. It'll be generate image request. Now if you hover over it, as you can tell, body is type safe. Okay, now I'll say from the body, we're gonna destructure these values. So I'm gonna get every single one of them, model, original file name. Let me get the very last one, which is style slug. Now here again, we will have a bunch of different validations. So if there is not a image URL, we'll say please upload an image first. Then we can check if the type is what we expect. So I'm gonna say, let me import it first. This is something that we have under the constants. So if the uploaded image type is not one of them, we're going to throw an error. Now you might be asking, why do we check if it is string or not? This is for TypeScript, because if you delete that, here this is not going to be very happy. Okay, so this has nothing to do with Next.js or React. It is just basic TypeScript. I hope you don't mind it that we copy and paste. Then we can check for the slug as well. So these are just some nice to have validations. If user doesn't select a style, we're going to say you need to choose a style, right? These are some backend validations that we are doing. And then they need to pass an AI model as well. In our case, we have only two, which is GPT-1 and 1.5. Okay, I'm going to save this to get the formatting. Then we can get the preset. So here I will say, get the preset. This is a method we have. If preset is something that we don't know, then we'll say unknown style preset, right? So these are some basic validations. And finally, we'll have one more check. So before the if check, we would like to fetch the source image URL, which is going to be saved in ImageKit, right? So we're going to get the image response, and now we can check if it is not there, right? If it is not okay, then we'll say could not fetch the uploaded source image. But if we have the image, which is something that we will have most of the time, so like 99% of the time, this is not going to fail, but just in case if it fails, we'd like to have an if check so that our application doesn't break. Instead, we return them an error. Okay, now if we got the image, we can infer the size, right? So we're going to call this method that we generated, which is going to use the sharp behind the scenes, and we're going to get the image size. Okay, so this is something that you don't really need to memorize. Like, honestly, if you ask me to do it maybe next week, I cannot remember the syntax, which is completely fine. Just understand the logic, and I think that should be enough. So we already had the prompts, right? Let's go under the constants, or I think under the style presets, we have all these prompts, right? Now, instead of adding something like do not add extra people on every single prompt, we'll just do it one time, and it's gonna be right here. So let me get the prompt. So first off, we're gonna get the preset prompt, right? On top of it, we'll say do not add extra people or extra limbs, don't duplicate subjects, or don't change the overall camera angle, so that if we uploaded an image like this one, we're gonna get almost the exact same thing, but in a different style. So it's not gonna add extra people, no extra limbs, or extra eyes, so on and so forth, right? Even the camera angle will be the same. Okay, so this is what we are doing. Instead of adding this into every single prompt, we'll just do it only here once. Now this is an array. We would like to convert it to be a string. So here we are using the join method. So with this, now we are ready to execute our try and catch block. So basically we have all kinds of validations. Now we are ready to call our OpenAI model to generate the image. Now to generate the image, we're going to pass a couple of different arguments like the quality of the image, the user ID, so on and so forth. But just instead of doing it blindly, what I'd like to do is use AI agent monitoring so that we can monitor our AI agents with the token usage, latency, tool execution, and error tracking all in one place. This is a feature that Sentry has. As you can tell, it is new, but I definitely see this as the future of coding when it comes to, AI agent monitoring. They have a bunch of different SDKs, and the best part is you don't need to follow with, the entire documentation if you are not really interested. You can just copy the prompt and paste it to your LLM. So here you can open up your terminal. This is what we'll be doing actually. Let's just clear this up and I'll just say client. We are gonna paste this in, but instead of copying this one, I think we can go into the dashboard because they have a bunch of different SDKs, right? We are using the Vercel AI SDK, so I'm gonna select that one. Maybe under the insights, let's see, we have AI agents, right? I'm gonna click to it. Here, this is the test project that I had in past, but we will select the current one, which is called Luma Studio. And before I click to it, as you can tell, we have pre-made widgets so that we can see the agent runs, LLM calls by the model, how many token used. This is basically how much money you spent. You can think of it in that way as well, because it is token based. Then we have LLM calls and duration. So we'll go ahead, select this project. Okay, we need to set this up. We already have Next.js installed, so I'm going to say next. Then here you can do it manually, as you can tell, or we can just copy the instructions. So I'm going to select the Vercel AI SDK, which is selected by default. I'm going to copy it and I'll just paste it to my AI right here. So here we can tell client is moving out of the terminal. This is a feature that they just introduced while I'm recording. This is what we call the client Kanban. You can take a look at the details. They just made a very cool launch and it's going kind of viral. You basically have the Kanban board, but for the AI itself, for the AI agents. So I'm going to say, yes, let's go with the new experience. I'm going to press this one. Let's see what'll happen. This is something that I try for the first time with you guys. So it has installed the latest version of Client, I believe, and then it took me to this browser tab. It is running on localhost. They have like a tutorial, so you can run multiple tasks and see them, what they are doing, if it is in the progress, if it is in the error state, or if it is succeeded, right? Let's just say next. You can review the changes. Let's just read it. You can create tasks, okay? Then you can auto commit and link, review changes with commands, and I think finally we can put them in the trash. Here I'll be using Cloud Code. It is detected automatically, but I think you can select your own model as well. So at the moment, Cloud is very successful. It has done very well, one of the best LLMs. So I'm gonna select this one, but of course you can, choose anything that you wish. And then here, let's just say create a task. I'm gonna paste my prompt that we just copied from Sentry. Then I'll just say start this task. We can do it in plan mode. So it's gonna ask us a couple of different follow-up questions, but we don't really need it because everything has been explained from Sentry. And maybe we don't really want to make a commit because we are still building it. If you wanted to, you can select this and say automatically add a commit or make a pull request or move to trash. I'll just leave it as like I'm not going to select it, right? And I'll say start the task. Hopefully this is going to be done without any issues, but if we have any issues, I'll try to walk you through it. And while this is doing, let's take a look at our code base. I'm going to first save this to format it. Now what it should do is that I think it's going to come into the client or maybe on the server side, because we are going to be using the agent monitoring on the server side, right? We are using it under the API route. So here it should add an integration, which is going to be Vercel AI integration. And the other thing that we should have is the traces sample rate of 1, which is we already have, so it's not going to update it, I believe. So let's see, this is still thinking, it's trying to build it. We can click and see the details. So here, after waiting a couple of seconds, I realized this doesn't run and it asks a couple of different questions. So I will press here and then I'm gonna select the dark mode. If you wanted to, you can select one of these, but I'll go with the dark mode. Now it says you're using Cloud Code, but you need to connect with your subscription or pass an API key, or if you're using a third-party platform. Now I have some credits in Klein. I would like to use them instead of connecting my account. But if you wanted to, if you have a paid plan, just select them and, how do we call it? Like connect them to right here. In my case, I'll go right here under the settings. I'll say, let's select Klein instead of Cloud Code. API provider will also be Klein, and I'll say sign in with Klein so that it can know, it can recognize my account. Okay, so it looks like it is done successfully. And for the model, I'll be using Cloud Opus 4.6. I will leave the reasoning effort to be default, but you can customize it. And I think I'll leave everything as it is. I'm gonna say save. Maybe I will move cart to trash. As you can tell, I'll just do it from scratch. So I'll paste this in, which is the prompt we got from Sentry, and I'll just start this task. Hopefully this time it should work out. And as you can tell, it is thinking, and let's see if it is going to fail or succeed. So after a couple of seconds, it is done. As you can tell, it has created two different files. The one is the action, which is going to run on the server side. So it has all kinds of validations in the logic. Now, it also has the telemetry file, which I think Sentry tells to implement it. Now, if you wanted to, you can actually accept this. But since this is a tutorial, I would like to explain everything rather than just blindly accepting this. So I'm going to move this to trash so that we doesn't really accept this, and I want you to be able to follow along. But you get the point. This is how we can create multiple agents and give multiple different tasks. So I'm going to just say move this card to trash. So it is like canceled. Let's go back to Codebase. As you can tell, these are the files. I think Client has started a new branch. So we had the generate image. This has just been created, but we since moved it to trash, it's been deleted, which is fine. So let's try to do it manually. Since this is a tutorial, once again, I didn't want it to accept that blindly. So I'll go under the Sentry server.config. At the very end, I'll just have my integration. This is coming from the Sentry documentation. Okay, just go ahead and add this. It should be fine. Make sure you have this as well, which is coming by default. So we can close these and we can come under the try and catch block and try to implement that. Now, if you're using methods like generate text, it would be very simple to implement. You maybe just need to write one line of code, but since we are going to be using generate image, Sentry doesn't really handle this automatically. So we need to write a bit more code to implement it so that we can keep track of the token usage, latency, execution, so on and so forth. Okay, now I'll try to walk you through it. So we will basically start kind of like a process with Sentry. So I'm going to say await, call Sentry, start span. And this is going to give us a result back. So I'm going to say result. And this will take a couple of different arguments. The first one is an object. So go ahead and type this out or grab it from the source code. This is what I'll be doing. So we're going to give the name. Here I'll say image edit, and then we're going to give the model that is selected, the operation, which is a image generation request, and then we can pass some attributes. So these are the ones that I'll have. If you wanted to, you can add more things, but just know that you can always add on top of it. Okay, so that's the very first argument. Now the second one is going to be a callback method, as you can tell. So I'm going to say async. We're going to get the span as the argument. I know this might look a little bit confusing, but just follow along. In 5 minutes, everything should be pretty clean and crisp. So we're gonna get a result back. I'm gonna say out, which is output, and then I'll say await. Let's call the generate image method. And we are going to import this method from the AI SDK. So let's go right here. I'll say import generate image from AI, and we'll get this no image generated error type from here as well. We'll be using it in a couple of minutes. Okay, so let's scroll to the bottom. Within this method, we're going to have an object, which will be our kind of like options that we can pass. So I'll say the model that we would like to use will be OpenAI provider dot image model, and we're going to pass the model that is selected. And then we can add the next prompt or the next argument, which is going to be the prompt. So here I'll say, since we would like to generate some images, we'll say under the images array, we will have the image buffer. And then we'll have for the text, we'll be using the prompt that we have right here. And I think this is complaining. Let's just say we will always have it, so you can put exclamation point. And we got the text as well. Now we can add the size for AI so that it knows what kind of size it should generate. So let me close this. So here size is important so that AI knows which kind of output it should generate. Should it be square, 9 to 16, or 16 to 19, right? So we're going to say the sizes, or the size itself. We'll just say image size that we have at the top. And then we'll say provider options, which will be an object. Since we're using OpenAI, it'll go right here under this key. We'll say input fidelity, and this is going to be high. Now let me just put my comment what this means. So this means that the input image is used as a reference for the generation, right? Then I'll have one more. I think I need to put comment here. It's this complaining. Here we'll have another field. We'll say the quality. This is going to be equal to medium. If you wanted to, you can use high as well, but it'll be a little bit more expensive. So I'd like to just use quality of medium, and let me add the comment just in case if you're not watching the tutorial, but if you're reading the source code, just know what this does. Then we can put the output format, which is going to be PNG, and let's send the user ID to OpenAI as well, so that it kind of knows that this is not generated by a bot, or we just have the reference for the user. Okay, so that's the second object, which is the callback that we just passed. Now right below to this output, here I'm going to shrink it so that you can see it. I'm going to say const u, which stands for usage. So I'll say usage, and as you can tell, it is type safe. In this case, I'm going to get the usage. And here we'll have a couple of different validation checks so that we can add these as attribute to Sentry span, right? So we're going to say if tokens is not null, we're going to send the tokens so that we can monitor them. And we will do it 2 more times for the output tokens as well as the total tokens, right? Okay, so you can copy them from the source code if you don't really want to type this out. Finally, we'll add the last attribute, which is the response text. Here we'll say image generated, but the pixel data not sent to Sentry. Okay, at the very end, we'll just return this output. Okay, so now we can save and go below to right here. Now, so far what we have done is generating the image, right? OpenAI has generated the image, but we need to save it to ImageKit as well as our database, right? Okay, so we'll go right here. I'm going to say get the image result, and we're going to call this method so that we can upload it to ImageKit. We're going to say here is the image data, right? File name. Basically, I will have my slug name and then the result. We'll say put it under the folders. It should be under the results, and the meme type will be PNG. Okay, that's the image that has been generated and saved to ImageKit. Now we also want to call this method. Let me display. I think it was under the index, was it? Okay, so it is under the generations. So we're going to call this method so that we can save it to database. And we're going to save it to database so that we can fetch it under the history. Okay, so I hope everything makes sense so far. We'll go right here. I'm going to just copy and paste that as well. Super simple, nothing complicated. We just await this call by passing our arguments. And then what we'll be doing is maybe calling Sentry so that we can say, just log this info, which is generation completed. Here is the ID, slug, as well as the model. And at the very end, we will send a response back to client. So I'm going to have this one. You can add more data if you're really interested, but this should be fine in our case. Under the catch, I'm going to add a console log for debugging purposes while we are building it. So it is right here. Then we can get this type from AI. You can just read this code, nothing complicated. We basically handle the errors. Now, what we have just built in this file is something that you can use in your future projects as well. So literally you can copy this and paste it for your future projects if you are building a feature like this one that we have, where you can generate an image. You can add different prompts, but it would not be in this file, right? You just come here and you would just come here and update the objects, the prompts, add more styles. I don't know, it could be anything, but this file would mostly be the same. So what we have here is completely customizable. Let's say for ImageKit, you don't really want to use ImageKit. You'd like to use a different service. You would just update only that part. For authentication, let's say you don't really want to use Clerk, then you would only update this part. So you got the point. You can always customize this file, but the general idea would be the same. Now, I don't want to make this section any more complicated, so I think I'm going to commit my changes and see you in the next section. For now, let's see what we have done. We have updated this part so that we can have a AI agent monitoring from Sentry. Then we added our entire route. I think that's the main logic of this section. And then the other one is to have the upload route. And this is going to be something needed later in the video. Let's say if we even use this method. Okay, so we haven't used this, but we're going to be using it from the client so that ImageKit can provide us these values. And what else? We have generated this file where we have some constants and some methods that we are using or we will be using in the future. Okay, so these are the things that we would need. Let's go right here, stage everything and create a commit message. And then I'm going to sync this up. Okay, so with this, hopefully I'll see you in the next section. Alright, so we have our API routes ready. We'll just jump into the studio page and get started with the UI elements and the logic. Now, before we get into it, I'd like to give you a quick demo of the end result. So this is what we have at the moment, and this is the end result that we're gonna have. So first off, let me just upload an image. Now from my machine, I'm gonna select this image. Okay, so I'll go ahead and upload it. So here, if I press that button, as you can tell, this is the one that I will select. Now for this style, you can go with anything. Maybe I'll just go with the PixArt, and then I'll leave the model as it is, and then I'll say generate. And let's wait for the end result. Alright, so after a couple of seconds, as you can tell, the result is right here. Alright, so after a couple of seconds, as you can tell, the result is right here. It is as close as to the original image. As you can tell, there is one generation that has been used. So we had 75, now it is 74. If you wanted to, you can replace the image with this button or that one. Yeah, so we can also see this under the history. I can say view and zoom in if I'm interested. I can download the result as well. As you can tell, it is right here. So this is one I have installed in the past, but this is the one that we just got. Then we can close this. So this is the end result of this page. We are going to build it. Before we get into UI, we would like to build a context. So we will go under the root maybe. So I'm going to press here. I'm going to create a context folder. And here we'll have a context so that we have some global state that we can use in multiple different files. So for the name, I'll say studio workbench context, let's say. You can call this anything, but this is the name that I'll be going with. For now, I'll just say RFCE and maybe just return nothing for now. Okay, so we're gonna go under the components. Maybe I will create a folder for the studio. So I'm gonna have a couple of different components and I'm going to put all of them right here because they are related to the studio screen. If we wanted to, we could do the same thing for the home screen. So I think we could create a home folder right here and put these elements within that, but I'm gonna leave it as it is. If you wanted to, you can do it once you complete this tutorial. And just before we get into the context file, I would like to go under the lib. I will create this file called types.ts, and I'll have a couple of different types that are going to be helpful in this section. Okay, so we have the generation history summary item. So basically we have the item itself. Wait, I think I have a typo here. It should be item. Let me delete everything and bring this back. Okay, so we got this type. As you can tell, these are the fields that we had in the database as well. Then we have the generation result. So these are just some types, no logic at all. It is basic TypeScript. Go ahead and grab this from the source code and paste it under the types.ts file. We are going to be using them. Now we can go under the context file. Now in total, this file is going to be around 200 lines of code. And if you don't want to type this out, you can just grab it from the source code, paste it right here, and then watch me explain everything. And this is actually what I'll be doing. Now it's super simple, even though it is like 200 lines of code, there is nothing complicated. So here we will have methods like when we upload an image, we will be able to see the preview immediately. So for this, we're going to run a use effect. And to be able to store the image, we're going to have a state. Then we'll have more states to check if the dialog is open or not. So super basic stuff, nothing complicated, I promise. So I'm going to go ahead into the source code. I'm going to copy it and paste it. And then I will walk you through it step by step, I promise. So we have around 250 lines of code. But as I said, nothing complicated. It is just basic React and some TypeScript specific. Okay, so let's just scroll to the top. First off, we are using use client so that, this is running on the client. We don't really get the server hydration errors. So we have some other imports that could be some type or, some hooks from React. So you can take a look at the imports, nothing special here. Then we have the type for the context. So again, if you were to use JavaScript, this would not be needed at all. We are just using it so that our code is type safe. So here we say, let's create a context and the initial value is going to be null. Then we will make it type safe by passing this part. Once again, if you are not using TypeScript, you would not need to pass this as the generic argument, right? If this was a JavaScript file, you would just leave it in this way. But here we are using TypeScript, so let's make it type safe. Okay, so we have the upload input ID, which is going to be the ID that we will be using for this input element. So if you take a look at it under the HTML, you're going to see that we actually have an input element, which is this one. Even though it is not visible, right? When you press this button, actually, in the background, we are pressing this input, which is type of file, so that we can select a file from our machine. Super basic React concept. Then we have this method where we call our API endpoint, right? Then we get the response. And if you remember from the response, we got token, expire, signature, and public key. So let me prove that. These are the fields that we return, right? So we make it type safe and we just say, typecast this as this object. And then after this, we have the provider element, which wraps the children so that we can use the value within our application. Then we have one hook that allows us to use the context itself. So this is super basic React concept. If you don't really understand this code, that means your React fundamentals are not good enough, that you should focus on the basics of React context. Okay, then we have this hook, which is the most of the logic. So we have some initial data we're going to get from the server side. And then we have a bunch of different states, as you can tell. So we have the state for the selected preset, right? The selected style. So user selected this one or that one or any of them. So we're going to store it and send it to AI. Then the selected model. So from this dropdown, which one is selected? So basically a bunch of different states that we're gonna keep track of. So we have error is loading, the quota of the user. So is it 75? Is it 0? Right? Anything left or not? Okay, then we have a use effect, and I try to document it as much as possible. Basically, this is going to give the preview to the user when they select a file from their laptop. Okay, so we have some variables. As you can tell, that's the result preview, selected preset, and is the generate button disabled or not. So we have a method to reset the state, to replace the file, open the preview, close the preview, and handle submit method. So here, first off, we prevent the default so that the page doesn't refresh. Then we have a validation check. Then what else? We reset our state. Then we have a try and catch block. Now here we are calling this method. Let me control click to it. So this is going to send the request and get all these fields, right? Let's scroll to the bottom. This is what we call the Auth params. Let me find it. Okay. Then by using these params, we will be able to upload the image to our image kit dashboard. And we're going to store it under this users folder, right? So the folder name is going to be under the users, this user ID, and then under the uploads. If we got some errors, we are going to handle it, but else we are going to call the generate image endpoint that we have built. We're going to pass all the data. Hopefully we're going to get a payload or the response back. If it fails, we are going to do some magic. It's not really magic, but we basically update our state. Result is going to be null because it failed. We are going to set the error and we are going to update the quota. Let's scroll to the bottom. What else we have? So if we don't have any errors, we are going to get the generation. This is what I call as G. And then we are going to keep track of it as a log in the Sentry dashboard. Then what else we have? We set the result, set the history. So here what we do is that we are going to keep all the items in the history as it is, but the latest one will be at the beginning. So just imagine if I uploaded a new one and generated it. So this would be right here, but the newest one, this would go to the side, newest one would be right here, right? So this is what we're doing. Then we'll update the quota. As you can tell, this is going to update the UI immediately. If we fail, we will handle it. But finally, we're going to set the state to be false. The loading state will be false. Okay, so I know this is a lot of code that we copied and pasted, but trust me, just typing this would take 30 minutes, which is unnecessary. So there is nothing complicated. Please, pause the video, take a look at the code. I think you will be ready to go. Okay. Now let's close this and go into the page.tsx and let's actually get started with the UI. Now this will be a server component, right? So I'm going to mark this as async function. So we can run await within this. And we already had the auth method that I'm going to import from Clerk. And we're going to get the has. So this is for the pricing. We're going to check if a user has a specific plan or not. Then we have the user ID. Now what I'll be doing is that I'm going to get the initial history. And we already have the method. I'm going to call it. As you can tell, this is what we have built in the past. And we'll say if user is authenticated, go ahead and call this, but else leave it as an empty array. And then we can get the initial quota as well. So here I'm going to call all these imports. Okay. So what we do is that we say if user is authenticated, then call this method, but else pass this object, which is kind of the default, the default object that you would have. Now we can go into the return statement. So I'm going to make this to be a main element, and I'm going to pass some class names. So let's paste this in instead of typing it out. Then we will have a div element within this. So I'm going to say div. This will get some class names as well. Let me grab it from the source code and paste it right here. So we'll just center it and give it a maximum width. You can update this value if you're interested. And then we're going to build the header element, which is this part, as you can tell. So, let me select it. So it is the header element. And for this, I will go right here into VS Code, and I'm gonna get my header element. Okay, so let me just import them. We got a link from next link. We got the image from next image. Here we use the logo.png. We have some width and height, class names, and that's it. We have the p tag, which is like our logo, but for the text. And then we got the button element, as well as the user button. Okay, so let's save and take a look at the end result. This is what we have at the moment. Okay, it is working as expected. And if you press this, it'll take you to the home screen. Now, right below that, we would like to have the actual workbench, right? So this entire thing, what we call the workbench element. So I'm going to go right here, maybe right below to the header, but still within the div. I'm going to say call this element. So I'm going to say studio workbench, and we're going to pass the data. So this will get the Clerk user ID. So it's going to get the Clerk user ID, initial history, as well as the initial coda. I'm going to copy this and create this under a file. So it'll be under the components. Let's go right here under the studio. I'm going to have the workbench.tsx file, and I'll say rfce. We can call it as studio workbench, just like that. And we'll say export default this method. Now TypeScript is not really happy with it because we didn't pass the types. Let's first destructure all these values. So we got the Clerk ID, initial history, as well as the initial coda. Let's say the type for this is going to be studio workbench props, which is all these fields, as you can tell. And instead of returning a div element, we are going to return our provider that we created. So I'm going to say studio workbench provider. And within this, we're going to pass a form element. So we will create it in a second. But here, let's pass all these values. So it's going to get the Clerk user ID. Let's say initial history, as well as the initial coda. Now within this provider, we are going to have the form element, which is going to be basically this entire thing that you see. So I'm going to call this component, and let's try to create it right here. So I'm going to say function, call this method. It's not going to get any props, but here we will call the hook that we created, which is the use studio workbench. And then we're going to get a couple of different values. So I'm going to get the handle submit. We can get the viewed history item, as well as the close history preview. Now within this, we will return a form element. Let's just say call the form. It's not going to have any actions, but on submit, we're going to call the handle submit method. And to style this will get some classes. Now within the form itself, we are going to have the controls panel as well as the preview panel, right? So this is the controls, the controls panel, and then that's the preview panel. And then if there is an item that is being viewed, we are going to display this dialog. So first off, I'm going to call this method, which is called the studio controls panel. And let's try to create it right here. So I'm going to say controls dash panel.tsx. Now I want you to copy and paste this entire file. Again, I will walk you through it. It is only styles, no logic at all. 200 lines of code. I know too much, but let me try to walk you through it. So what we have here is that we are calling the hook that we created so that we can get all these values, right? So this is what we return out of this hook. And then we basically get most of them because we are going to need it in this component. Then we need to get the generate button as well as the style preset card. So that's the generate button, and then that's the style preset card. We will create it under the workbench UI. So head over to the source code and grab these two components from this file. If you wanted to, you can copy the entire file and paste this in as well. So grab the import for the button, CN, and these icons. So as you can tell, like this literally has no logic at all. It is just a button. It calls these props. So I don't know why, like why would we type this rather than copying and pasting? So we're going to get the image element from next image. Again, this gets some props and just using it. So on button, it calls this method, right? Then we have the image, we have the icon, and that's it. So I'm going to save this. Let's go right here. Maybe delete this and bring this back. Now it works. Let's save and hopefully we can see the end result. So we have workbench. Let's just wait for this to be reloaded. Okay, so it looks like I'm just going to refresh once again. Let's see. Okay, maybe we should mark this as use client, maybe. Let's see. Okay, so this is the server component, and here this should be a client component. Let's go right here. I'm gonna say use client. Because within this component, we are using a hook. And if you're using a hook, it should be a client component. Let's save it and take a look at the end result. As you can tell, this user is on free plan. So we got 3 generations. We have this upload image, which is working, as you can tell. We have the styles, if it is selected. So we have these icons. What else? We have the drop down and we can generate. Now, since I haven't uploaded an image, it says, disabled. But if we upload an image, let's select any of these. I don't know, like I can select any of them. And now it says generate. I'm not going to press that for now until we build the right hand side as well. Now, when we are in the loading state, we would like to use a skeleton component. So you can head over to ShatCN and then just search for skeleton. Okay, so this is a similar component that we would like to have. First off, I'll copy this and paste it into my terminal. Maybe here I have... Wait, so I'm going to kill this terminal, clear this up, and I'm going to paste this in. This should get the skeleton element. So it is going to create this file under the UI. Here we go. And then we will go under the workbench UI. Now what I'll be doing, I'll just get this entire file from source code. It has a couple of different other components. So not only generate button and style preset card, but there will be a couple of more components like the history card so that we can see our cards right here. Then what else? We have the result preview frame. We have style preset card as well as the generate button. So you can get this entire file. And as you can tell, we are using the skeleton component. This is what we're going to be using if we are in the loading state. Now let's go under the workbench. Right below to this, we're going to call it the preview panel. So I'm going to say studio preview panel, and we will create it under a file. Let's say under the components, under the studio, I'm going to say preview-panel.tsx. And I will get this file content from source code as well. All we are doing here is that we are just having some UI elements under the return statement, and then we are using these values from our custom hook. You can take a look at the end result, but let's just try to save and see how that will look like. Okay, so here we can tell that this is the uploaded image. Let me just refresh and take a look at the end result without any images. Okay, so as you can tell, original and result, it depends on the style that is selected. If you upload an image, let's select this one, this part would be updated. Now in this account, we don't really have any history items. So let's try to get a generation. I'm gonna select this image. I'll say open. Let's select a size or a style. Here I'll be going with the anime cell this time. You can update the model as well. I'll be going with this one, and let's say generate. So as you can tell, we have the loading skeleton. I don't know if it is visible from the video, but it basically animates with the pulse class, I believe. Okay. So once this is ready, I'll just be right back. What should happen is that we should get one item in our database, because at the moment we don't really have anything in this project, right? This is the first time we are actually calling our API routes. Then this should decrease by 1. This should be incremented by 1. And in the, let me open up the image kit. I was going to say under the image kit dashboard, these files should be uploaded. And I think we already got one. So under the folders, let's try to open this up. Under this user ID, which is this current user, right? We have results and uploads. So this is the image that we just uploaded, right? This is the original one. So as you can tell, this is the uploaded image. And let's go back. We have the results as well. And this is the generated result. It has this style called anime cell. And as you can tell, it is right here. And that means it is under the database as well. So that's how easy it is to implement once you have your API routes. Now I know that we have copied and pasted, but you can pause the video, go into this component, and just see there is almost no logic at all. Like this part that you see on the UI is coming from this code base. And then you can scroll to the bottom, you can see the images. What else we have? We have the fallback, we have the result text, as you can tell, and then finally we're gonna have the history. So here we say if history length is greater than 0, right? It says if it has existed, go ahead and display a history card. But else, let's just say this is going to be equal to false. This part should run, and this is what you would see. And I'll bring this back. Now the very last thing that we need to build is that dialog. Now, if I click to this, nothing happens, right? But what we want to have is a dialog where we can see the image, the details, and then this button where we can download it. So I will go back to VS Code, and right here I'm going to say if there is an item that we are seeing at the moment, in this case, we are going to call this method or this component, then we're going to pass these props. So let's go here under the studio, under the components. I'm going to create this file, which will be history preview dialog. And I'll just grab the content from the source code. As you can tell, it is 100 lines of code where we just have some UI elements and we are calling our props. I'm going to import it and let's see how that would look like. Okay, so it is already working. As soon as I click, I can see the end result. I can download the image. As you can tell, it is this one. And we can close the model. So now that we have made some calls to our AI agents, you can go into Sentry dashboard. Under the Insights, AI agents, you can see all these widgets for this project. And you can see like 10 minutes ago, we have this call and you can click to it and then see the details. Like what was the user prompt, right? What was the input? What was the output? And you can see all kinds of details and how many tokens have been used by this call as well. So you can calculate, how much you spent on, on a call. Then you can see the logs, the waterfall. And if you're interested in all kinds of details, you can just come here and explore it. So I'm gonna leave it for you, but that's the general gist of it. Once again, under the insights, under the AI agents, you should be able to see all kinds of details that is related to your AI monitoring. Okay, so believe it or not, that's the entire project. I'll just try to generate a couple of more images with the exact same image that I have uploaded. Maybe I'll select this time, this style, and I'm going to say generate, and let's see the end result. Okay, so here is the end result. Maybe it doesn't really look the clay render. I mean, not that much. And that's because this would work very well if you upload a headshot. But let's just select voxel block and try to generate once again. And let's see what we're gonna get. So it has been generated. As you can tell, this is in the voxel block style. Okay, so that means everything is working as expected. Now, as you can tell, this user doesn't have any generations left. So it says you should see the plans and upgrade it. So I'm gonna press that. Let's go with the studio plan. I'll say subscribe. Now I'll be using the test card since we're in development. We don't really want to pay for this. And once this is done, as you can tell, we are in the studio plan. It says that this is active. Let's go into the studio screen and hopefully we should have more generations. Okay, so we already used the 3 of them, but in total we have 172 more generations. Okay, so with this, now we can commit our changes and end the section. In the next one, we are going to deploy our project. I'll go right here, close everything. Let's try to stage everything. Get a commit message. Let me press this once again. Okay, so I'll just say commit and sync this up. In the next section, we are going to deploy our project and hopefully complete the entire tutorial. Now, before we deploy our project, there is one thing that I want to mention. If you want to update the title of this tab or the project, you would go under the app and find the layout file. And then here under the metadata, you can update the title. So here you can put anything, save, and it should be reflected right here. In this case, I'm just going to keep it simple and leave it as it is. But if you wanted to update it, just, update this part and add a commit, and that should be it. Okay. Now I will go into vercel.com and then we are going to select our repository. So just say create a new project, then go right here, import this. We will leave everything as it is and we will add our environment variables. So I'm going to go under the .env file and I will copy everything as it is. And then I'll just paste it. Then what else? I think we can leave everything as it is because it's already configured. So we can just say deploy this project. Let's see if we are going to get any errors. If not, it should be working out. And if we got some errors, I'll try to fix it with you. And while this is deploying, I want to mention that you are going to get an email when you got some payments, right? So Clerk will send you a receipt or an invoice. It'll just say this user paid, they're on this plan, the date, and the amount. So this is something that you might want to keep in mind. Now let's see if this has been deployed. Looks like yes. So I'm just going to say head over to the dashboard and visit this project. Okay, so as you can tell, our application is live. It is working without any issues. Let's try to scroll to the bottom. Animations are working. We'll test out the rest of it. Okay, so we have our plans, testimonials, as well as the footer element. So I'll just scroll to the top and let's say sign in with my Google account. Okay, so we are signed in and remember, this is the production ready app and this is the, in the development on localhost. I think we can close this and let's try to give it a try once again. So I just took a screenshot of this image and I'll try to upload it right here. So I'm going to select it, which is this one. And I'll be going with the Storybook 3D in this case. I'll leave everything as it is and let's say generate. And let's wait for the end result if we are going to fail or if it is going to succeed. Alright, so as you can tell, we got the result without any issues. Image is right here. We can download it if we really wanted to. Then we got it under the image kit dashboard as well as under the generations table. So in total, we have 4 different history items. Okay, so with this, we are completely done with this project. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something new from it. I know there was a lot of copying and pasting in this course, but the general idea was to teach you everything, like how everything comes together as one piece, rather than typing out every single detail. Now, from here on out, you can add more features and maybe just make it your actual SaaS. It's pretty simple at this point, but you can make, under the studio screen, you can add the video generations or a bunch of different other presets and, customize it, put it in a completely different situation. And in case if you take this project to the next level, just let me know. I can help you out to market it as well. Alright, so with all that being said, thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.